This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Curt Parr in the third chair.
In the Drinking Olympics, Wisconsin is Michael Phelps.
With contributions from Total Fangirl.
Vampires do not sparkle.
And our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to a very special edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at the speed of a plethora of vaguely game-related fast things. Today's edition is brought to you in memory of John Joseph McLaughlin, political commentator extraordinaire and unquestioned inspiration for Rapid Fire. Tonight, we're going to do things a little bit differently. John McLaughlin, the host and creator of the McLaughlin Group, passed away on August 16th of this year. He was a powerhouse in the political world, and most of you have seen him in one movie or another playing himself, many of you without ever having realized it. This is the 196th episode of the D6 generation. Every single one of those episodes has started with Rapid Fire. Love it or hate it, it's been an integral part of the show all along. And it didn't feel right, even in memory of the man who inspired it all, to miss out on Rapid Fire completely, although I did want to talk to you about John McLaughlin. So here's what we're going to do. Some of you may not be aware of this, but Rapid Fire is designed to be a rough table of contents for each episode. So what are we talking about this episode? Firstly, we'll be talking with third chair Curt Parr about using the D6 generation Play My Mob concept and training, corporate and otherwise, and all game corporate life in general. There's a lot in there, and I didn't pronounce half of it. Then we'll be reviewing the Stronghold Games Gen Con offering Dragon and Flagon, Flagon and Dragon. You'll have to listen and find out. By the game designing powerhouse of the Engelstein family. And in fact, it was Jeff Engelstein who inspired this next bit by his question on Twitter regarding how many D6G listeners knew that Rapid Fire was inspired by the McLaughlin Group and Geekly McNerdigan, at least in part, inspired by John McLaughlin himself. So, without further ado, I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ, Jerry Williams Wakelin, and special guest Curt Stephen Packman Parr, international training guru and drunken master of the ancient play-by-mob secrets. Let's begin. Issue number 1. The McLaughlin Group was a syndicated half-hour weekly public affairs television program in the United States hosted by John McLaughlin from its first episode in 1982 until his death in 2016. A group of 4 pundits prompted by McLaughlin discussed current political issues in a round-table format. Oh, I didn't read this carefully. In what year did the McLaughlin Group first appear? Tom Rogan Russ.
Retention, 1974.
Eleanor Clift Curt.
Worst year of my life, 1982, man.
Curt at least remembered. I didn't even look and notice that I had said it. Said the answer right there. I'm not even going to give that. Curt, okay, fine, Curt. You get it. Russ, you get the biggest wrong in the history of Rapid Fire. Anyway, 1982, smack dab in the middle of Ronald Reagan's first term, when politics were just starting to get interesting. Issue number 2. Leveraging the reputation of its irascible host and the regular panelists, the McLaughlin Group was almost immediately a major player in national politics, meticulously balancing his guests with 2 from the left and 2 from the right as he berated both sides evenly. The program was an energized discussion of the most important issues of every week. Question. Ronald Reagan, while in office as the United States president, once referred to McLaughlin and his group as taking the traditional Sunday morning talk show format of a moderator with a group of journalists and turning it into a political version of what 1978 movie? Peter Reichert Russ.
Newsroom.
Douglas Kenny Curt.
Road Warrior.
Ooh, nice one.
Animal House. Making you both legitimately wrong. We got to do something. You know what we're going to do? Political toga party. Issue number 3. Nice. Although he will always be remembered for the impact he had on national politics and the coverage thereof, no single achievement, no matter how seminal, can be said to encompass any entire human life. John McLaughlin was a complex man with a rich life both in and out of politics, and before and after entering the national scene, he had accomplished a great deal. Question. What was John Joseph McLaughlin's occupation prior to becoming one of the shepherds of the Fourth Estate? Railway operative Russ.
I'm going to say he was a editor.
Canning worker Curt.
I believe he was a dairy farmer.
both really, really wrong.
Oh.
He entered the Jesuit Order of the Catholic Church in 1947, was ordained as a priest in 1959, and went on to earn 2 master's degrees, one in philosophy and one in English literature from Boston College. After his ordination, McLaughlin spent some years as a high school teacher at Fairfield College Preparatory School, a Jesuit prep school in Connecticut, and then he took time off to teach from teaching to earn a PhD in philosophy from Columbia University. He was a busy, busy man. Issue number 4. John McLaughlin was famous for his constitution and work ethic. In every aspect of his life, he was known for seldom succumbing to illness. Question: how many episodes to the nearest 5 did John McLaughlin miss during the entire 34-year history of the McLaughlin Group? Stanley Rudwan Russ.
0. He never missed one.
Franco Colombo Curt.
He missed the birth of his 2 children.
That was incorrect. Russ got this one, so correct.
Yes.
Curt, that makes you wrong. 1. He missed the episode that aired only days before he passed away. That's it for now. Thank you, John. And thanks to the rest of you for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G.
Hello!
Hello!
Hey, and welcome to episode 196, Craig.
Oh, jeez, it gets bigger and bigger every day.
We got to start thinking about what we're going to do for 200 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakeland.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Curt Parr.
Hey, Curt!
Curt Parr!
Curt Parr.
Gamification
like Brett
CEO.
Favre.
This is the Chief Gamification Officer. Curt, this is awesome. We are so excited. We ran into Curt at random at Gen Con, or maybe it was planned. We're not sure. But anyway, bumped into Curt, started chatting with him, and he told us some amazing tales about all the things he was doing to apply gaming and some of the crazy things we've done on the show to his business. So we're like, well, that's really cool. And clearly Curt is a gamer because he's standing there in the middle of Gen Con, so that's cool. So we figured, why not have Curt on the show? So Curt, welcome to the D6 Generation. Really great to have you here.
Thank you. It is great to be here.
So we're
really excited.
We're going to dive in a little bit here with Curt and talk about how he is applying gaming concepts to his life as a business consultant. That's pretty exciting stuff. And then later, we're going to dive, and this is somehow related, we're going to talk about a game about tavern brawls because, you know, it's very much like a business training session, right?
That's true.
Basically the same thing. So we're going to talk about Dragon Flagon, one of the hotnesses from Gen Con 2016. So we're going to be talking about that as well.
Still upset I missed out on that.
I know, you should have been there in line with me. I bought 2 copies and gave one away. In fact, I should say, more about this later, I was visiting right after Gen Con. I went to the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Great Britain, right? And whilst I was in Wales, I decided I'd stop by and say hello to Owen. And Owen and his family are kind enough to show us around Wales, which is great. And I brought a copy of something fun from Gen Con to give to Owen as a thank you for showing us around. And I gave him Dragon and Flagon. I later told Jeff Engelstein I was going to do this, and Jeff said that is the first internationally distributed copy of Dragon and Flagon. So I would just like to say, Stephen Bonacore, that'll be $350. Just to deliver that across the sea. All right, so first, before we get into all this great stuff and achievements, we should talk about a few things. You know, Craig, we are just wrapping up the big Dice Tower contest on social media.
Yes, indeed.
Just wrapped up.
By the time you hear this, it's probably too late.
And if you missed your chance at the big Dice Tower contest, the results of Gen Con and everything on our social media, you know what that means, Curt?
Oh, I'm not sure.
It means they should have been watching us on social media. That's basically what happened there.
That's right.
So if you
It's all about the tweets, yo.
Right, yo. So if you're not following us on the Twitter or the Facebook, please do, and you will then be able to participate in these contests for no charge whatsoever, and much less embarrassment than participating in contests on the actual show, which is, you know, always a win. So we had that going on. So thanks to Tom Vassal and the Dice Tower Network for allowing us to participate in that wonderful event and giving away free stuff to our listeners. That's always very nice. You know, now also, one more thing we should mention is we just finished getting out of Dunkin' Donuts and chatting about some things with our friend Curt here. Curt, do you remember what we talked about in Dunkin' Donuts?
I think we talked about the maple bacon donut.
Ooh, we did, and it was very delicious.
And then we also discussed quite a bit of Gen Con, I believe, because it was fresh in the brain.
It was. We talked about all the things that, we'll talk a little bit about Gen Con and achievements here, what we played and stuff, but that was really the spot where we talked about what we thought of this year's convention, what was attendance like, was it crowded, did we like everything, are we going to go back next year, all those kinds of things we discussed in the Lost Chapter. So, Craig, if someone wants to hear all that, what should they do?
Well, if you want to hear all that, the best way to get our Lost Chapters is definitely to become a patron. Go to the D6 Generation, find the Patreon button, click on through, or go to patreon.com, find the D6 Generation. Super easy. Just search for it. If you want my opinion, forego the video. There's a reason we do radio. And just go ahead and go on there. And it's kind of like a tip jar. And if you tip $2 or more per episode, you get the entire catalog of Lost Chapters completely unlocked for you for no additional cost. And a really cool app that will allow you to manage your D6G listening as you go.
Exactly right. So what's the time now for, Craig?
Right now it's probably time for, you threw it to me, and that means it's time for Achievements in Gaming.
It is indeed a time for Achievements in Gaming. And Achievements, of course, is brought to us by all of our fine friends over at Patreon, without which none of this would be possible, particularly all the crazy things we do at these conventions. Possible. Yes, I've added some syllables for, good measure.
That's good.
To really show our appreciation.
Indeed.
That's what we do. So, Curt, what have you been playing lately on the board game, miniature games, and other non-electronic fronts?
So, pretty much Codenames Pictures has been very popular at the house since I brought it back from Gen Con.
Oh, nice.
People are digging that.
Now, how does Codename Pictures change on the Codename paradigm?
It's
for one
pictures?
thing, it's pictures. Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the things that interests me is I kind of analyze things to death anyway. I believe that Codenames was translated into 8 different languages. Codenames Pictures is not going to need to be translated into 8 different languages. They'll have to have rule books, right. But the production values are just going to translate. So what's interesting is that the pictures are sort of embossed lithograph or just the black and white, right? They're not full color pictures, and because they have now a top and a bottom. The words were on 2 sets of cards. You had one facing one set of players and one facing the Codemasters. Mm-hmm. The pictures have a perspective. And one of the first plays in, the Codemaster next to me, I was a Codemaster, and the blue team Codemaster, Keith, was looking at what it was obviously a tree. It was obviously a tree.
Right.
And what he saw was an ostrich. And I leaned over, and I'm on his same side, but I leaned over and looked at it from his perspective, and sure enough, I could see the ostrich.
Wow.
There's its foot, and the big bustly part that I thought that was the treetop was could it be perceived as an ostrich? So you have to sort of blur your vision and cross your eyes and look upside down and use a mirror, and then maybe you gain half of the perspectives that you'll need to be successful.
So does this more ambiguous interpretation make the game even more interesting, or do you find it, so which do you like better, pictures or words?
So I have not yet mixed my 2 copies.
Oh, you can though, right?
You absolutely can. You absolutely can. And I believe that when I mix my 2 copies, I might, rupture the space-time continuum or font or something.
There may be a rift.
There may be a rift at that point, because it is incredibly interesting. I think that for the fight factor, do you ever get the fight factor in board games? Like, how could you not say this?
Yeah, right.
For example, ball was one of the ones in the word game, and someone gave me the clue Royals instead of maybe throw or catch or something else, and luckily we got Royals won. Right, they just needed the one word for us to win. And
right.
She'll never live that down, but. In this game, I think the fight potential sort of goes up because you can see that obviously in the picture had a pair of roller skates, and you may miss that completely as a code giver or a guesser.
Right.
The guessers have a lot of extra help, especially in a multiple team. But it's a great example of how a smart mechanic, how a very smart mechanic can be completely innovative. In a new way, and I think Dixit did this when it won the Spiel, a couple years ago with pictures. So it's a little Dixity, with code names, but then Obviously, the clue gridding and the perspectives matter a lot.
Right.
So
that's awesome. Great.
Yeah.
I love the. I didn't really think about. I never really read the back of the box at Gen Con. I thought it was a great idea, but I didn't really think about the fact that they're interchangeable. So I can only imagine with the two grids, and you're saying like animals too, and one's the word fox, and the other side is this tree that you're thinking is an ostrich.
And the limiting piece might be that the words, you can say anything you want with the picture. If it's a picture of a baseball, you can say the word baseball. There's no limit. But the words, it would be almost like the taboo mechanic kind of coming in. Here's the list of stuff you can't say. So, boy, there's a unicorn there, but I can't say unicorn. Oh no! Or that's the bad guy's word or something.
Cool. That's awesome. I'm glad it didn't jump the shark, but rather made it even a cooler set of games. That's awesome.
That's great.
What else you playing?
Other stuff, Scythe was a big deal at Gen Con, and my buddy was on the beta test for Scythe, and it sold great. And we played a lot of it to beta with our own bits, but we really pimped out our own set. Had little mechs and things that would carry our guys, and it was great to see the finished product. And farming mechs, how can you go wrong? So it really just covers a lot of different genres, and it's a pretty good game. So that was a big deal. Big Trouble in Little China by Upper Deck. Right. So legendary Big Trouble in Little China. I don't know about you guys, I was a huge Big Trouble in Little China fan when I was a kid.
Yeah, who isn't? Our generation, you got to be.
Oh, it was absolutely the best. And I did a play for a box with that one. You go to the Upper Deck room and you pay your $8, and if you win the game, you get the game, right? So nice. I'm like, I'm going to give that a shot. If I'm going to pay $2, I might as well pay $8 and see if I can get one. Mm-hmm. And I spent entirely too much time just reading the flavor on the cards and appreciating the pictures and quoting it. I kind of felt like I was doing a Monty Python. Right. Everything is a line that you want to return to the movie with. I don't know how many times I referred to the Pork Chop Express. Nice. Or that we're going to head down for the White Tiger, if you know what I mean, And it was just a joy to sort of play and return. And what I realized is that, Legendary, the franchise, it's got the Marvel, the original with the Marvel characters. And then, Aliens was a big deal last year. Upper Deck is making this the Lego Star Wars of the board game world.
That's a good analogy. So they're going through all the classic. So are there some other ones you think they should add to their library there?
Oh, absolutely. I think, the Road Warrior was on my mind to the list. It would be great to see Thunderdome. Flash Gordon is a great 80s movie. Yeah, right. Real Genius is one that I cannot watch enough of. I think it's why I went to college.
You need the popcorn card, right?
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Conan the Barbarian, Bloodsport. I could just kind of go through every cheesy 80s movie in my brain, and it would make a great game.
How do they not have the Chuck Norris deck? I feel like that should exist.
Oh!
Right?
Well,
Chuck Norris whenever the Chuck Norris card comes up. Actually, no, the Chuck Norris card should appear in every one of their games, and it's just the trump card.
It's an instant takeout.
Chuck Norris says I win. Right.
Take out the villain.
Right.
Just defeat one villain.
Right. Just win. You win.
Just win.
Chuck Norris and his beard says you win. Yes, that'd be awesome. That'd be epic.
Great.
I love it. What else you playing?
At Gen Con, I was able to get a couple games of Galaxy Trucker introduced.
One of my favorites.
Friend that never played it.
Yeah.
Isn't that a great game?
It's such an awesome game.
I own it. I've got all the expansions, but for some reason it just makes it to the table. It's an oldie but a goodie.
I will tell you that the iPad app, have you tried it on the iPad?
Oh my goodness. Now here's a little bit of a trivia.
Yeah.
Do you know, I went to the Czech Games Edition area and I was asking what company do they partner with to do their development?
Right.
Do you know who does their development?
Who?
You guys guess. Do you guess?
No idea.
No, I don't know. Who does it?
Vlada.
Really? He does it himself?
Vlada does it.
What?
Him and one other guy. So that I go in and I ask, I said...
It's really good.
I said, who are you working with? And it was a guy that was from, the corporate, and Vlada wasn't there yet, but they were debuting their Through the Ages app, which looks amazing as well.
Right.
And I said, who's the company that you're working with? Because it's some of the interface, the portability between platforms.
Yeah, right.
It's solid. And it's a step above everything else.
Right.
And he said, who do you think in a thick Czech accent. And I said, I have no idea. I guessed, what is it, Nine Attack or Nine Attack.
Some of the big ones have doing a bunch.
Pokemon Go.
Right.
And he said, no. He said, guess again. And I said, it's not Vlada, is it? He goes, yeah, of course, why not?
Wow.
Why wouldn't he? And so, I told my buddy that, and he said, yep, God's walk amongst us.
Yeah, I guess so. It's fantastic. What I like about it, actually, what makes it, there's a cool mode in the iPad version that you can't replicate in the real game, where there's time units that, instead of making simultaneous picks, which makes it a fantastic pass and play game.
The 11 points.
And
I love that strategy.
It is so good.
There.
I've played it with my kids, like on road trips and stuff, just passing the iPad around in the back seat or when you're on the airplane or something. It is a fantastic. It takes a while to play, but it's a great time killer for on a road trip. It is just awesome, and it replicates the game to a T.
It's beautiful.
Really, really like it. Yeah, good stuff.
So that's one everyone should pick up, and it's iPad, Android, and the Windows platform even.
Right,
they just do it for everything.
Why not?
So because they can.
Right.
Really, other games, I really like to look at what's sort of coming down the pipe, and so I was able to attend at Gen Con the Best of Protospiel event, and I got to play two games. One is a unpublished prototype called Brotherhood of Thieves, and it's by Scott Starkey. And that game, it's kind of a card mechanic game where you all play a bunch of thieves, and there are a number of houses that you're going to go raid, and you have a hand of cards, and you might have to have stealth or fight or hide or sneak or something, and you play down on these houses where, like, the lowest house only has a value of 3. Well, you have to defeat 3 challenges, and the highest house had a value of 7. You have to defeat 7 challenges, and it's a frenemies game. You can sort of semi-cooperative, but you're really trying to be the best thief. And that was one I was playing with my buddy Nate, and it was one of those moments in games, where early on we're trying to defeat. We're working together. 3 of us are working together on like a 5 house, and it's who's going to contribute the last fight so we can get these points and move on. And Nate just wouldn't do it. He wouldn't cough up the card. So finally I have to cough up the card. And I hold grudges in games like that.
Nice.
So it gets to the end of the game. Nate is set up for the final play. And one of the things you can do is you get some items along the way. And they impact the challenges. So sometimes you want to play them on yourself and they do good things. But they also can do bad things. And I played my entire hand of cards against Nate to block him from the victory, and he's like, all this over one sneak card. And I'm like, yeah, you should have played it. So hopefully he learned his lesson. That he should cooperate when it's in my best interest, so that I can win the game.
That's right. That's people should all know that. That's right.
Everybody should know that. Isn't that the rule in games? Cooperate when it's in my best interest.
I feel like that's a thing. Yeah,
I think it is. Yeah. So, and then I played a really cute game just after that, which I don't know if it was. I don't believe it was part of the Protospiel, but Matt Warden did a game called Crunch Time QB that he submitted to a contest, and the idea of the contest was probably more important than the game. It was, what can nerds play at like a Buffalo Wild Wings while there's football on, where they're not going to be, people aren't going to come over and see the Agricola board and go like, oh God, what are you doing here? So it had to be some sports themed sort of thing you could play probably at a bar and not get your, but not get the atomic wedgie.
Right.
So that was kind of fun, and just to hang out with Matt, it was a good deal. But yeah, that's pretty much in the board game world, and of course some D&D 5e in the role playing arena, which has been pretty awesome. I enjoy a good role playing, but I only get to do that about once every other month, just due to schedule. So
nice. Very good. I'll give you an achievement for the last one too. That's awesome. That's quite the list you got there, Curt. That's pretty impressive. Craig, how about yourself, sir?
Let's see. Well, I was still playing War Machine right before we left for Gen Con. I had another game, this time against Christian. So Russ has me and his daughter Rose to play. So I needed to find my own Rose.
There you go.
And I can't think of a better Rose than Christian Flores. Anyway, so that was fun. I had a good time. He plays Mercenaries, so it was a different game. More Arena Rex, because if you've got this giant arena that I built, you want to use it as often as humanly possible. So I dragged Dave, our friend Dave, into a game before Gen Con. And then at Gen Con, I played I try to get in as many demos as I possibly can, and I try to get in as long a demo as I possibly can so I can kind of get a feel for the games coming out. So I did play the Rune Wars miniatures game at the Fantasy Flight booth as soon as that became available. Because the thing about writing for Fantasy Flight is you have no idea when the products you wrote for are made available. So the first I found out that I wasn't able to tell anybody that I did a lot of the writing for the Rune Wars miniatures game. Mm-hmm. And then I looked in the court. I was doing something else during the flight report, so I didn't see the flight report. And the next day, I looked in the case, and oh look, there's the Rune Wars miniatures game. So that was awesome, and it was fun. It was like a combination, exactly as you would expect, a combination of Warhammer Fantasy and X-Wing.
Nice.
So it's kind of neat. I played a game of Blood and Plunder, the game that the pirate game that was kickstarted just a few months ago with lead designer Mike Nunez. Taught old Andy and I how to play, and a hearty yo-ho to Fred Barnard and the rest of the the Firelock crew, because everybody was awesome over there. They gave us a bunch of models that I'm painting up. Russ and I are going to play as soon as we can. Speaking of D&D, the D&D with a micro celebrity that Terrace ran for Geek Nation Tours, I had an absolute blast. I ran an adventure that I sort of stole directly from the Discworld novel, The Fifth Elephant. And the guys that I played with, of course, were all from England. And all of them had read the Discworld novels. So everybody knew what I was stealing. But Paul, Phil of the Pole, Barry, and Swifty, I had a blast. And all four of them were listeners, so that was awesome, too. Really had a good time with that. Played Guild Ball with the lead designer, Matt Hart. He crushed me, but gave me some pointers to use against everybody else, so that was good. I demoed a game called Dracaris, which was an intriguing-looking fantasy miniatures game that was being sold out of the same booth as the Dust Miniatures studio stuff, which was an odd combination. And it looked neat. The terrain looked great. And I played the game, and the game game plays really interestingly. There are energy vortices on the board that can have different effects on you depending upon what race you are, what ability. So you can draw power from them to fuel your magic. You can summon elementals through these portals that will join your army. So there's a lot of really neat, cool stuff going on there, but the mechanics of the game are really, really throwback to like more complicated charts than Warhammer or 40K back in the day. So it was a very confusing sort of mix of really cool ideas and really old ideas that didn't really mesh for me. Although it was still a fun game, I enjoyed it. The price point was a little high for me, I thought, especially the models are all that sort of dust warfare, soft plastic. And I loved the terrain. Dracaris, look it up if you want. The cost was ridiculous for what you got. And yet, even then, I still couldn't deny myself. I got two $45 packs. And each pack just comes with 3 small pieces of terrain. But I loved it. It was awesome. More on that in a little bit.
Nice.
I did a full demo of Conflict 47. Probably be hearing more about that later. I did a full game of Vikings on Board, which I then went and proceeded to buy. Probably hear a little more of that later. Codename Pictures. I played a game of that. You just heard all about that from Curt. And did not get the chance to play the demo of Giant Killer Robots. The models of which were done by Weta Workshop, but the models were insane. The booth looked really cool, and the game looked neat. It's one of those that's going to be on Kickstarter, so it's God knows how long before you get that. I did a full game of The Hand of the King, which is a fun little card game coming out from Fantasy Flight that's got very cartoony pictures, so it's very funny to watch, to see the Hound drawn as a cartoony kind of character. That was a lot of fun, where there's a Varys card, and every major character is laid out in a big grid, and you're sliding Varys around up and down the grid, and as you slide over, you get to take the cards of like all of one house that Varys passes over to get from one point to another. So you're just trying to collect as many members of each individual house as you can, and whoever has the most from each house gets the points for that house. And it's brutal. Each time you close out an entire house, you get one of the secondary characters who are all on cards that give you special abilities. Super, super fast game. The entire thing, learning and everything, took less than 20 minutes. It was a blast. I would have bought it in a heartbeat if it was there. But of course it wasn't. And then Dragon and Flagon, or Flagon and Dragon, and Drogon and Flogon, or whatever it's going to be. We're going to talk about that later in the show.
Yes.
And the Red Dragon Inn. We played the Red Dragon Inn with Bob and Chris.
Yep.
Two bigwig listeners and supporters of the show. That was a blast. That was a lot of fun that night. We played the Red Dragon Inn and Dragon and Flagon.
We did.
Yeah, so that was we had a theme night with no alcohol, which was odd considering the theme.
Tavern bar fight and gambles, which is
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of gambling.
Yeah.
And then just this week, I had a hooky game day with a bunch of our friends. All took a day off from work.
How can you have a
still
hooky game day in the summer? I was going to say
it's not for me.
Oh, okay.
It was like everybody else took a day off from work. We played Vikings on Board again, 4-player Vikings on Board. I love that game. It's a blast. We'll talk more about that later. Played Codenames, the standard Codenames, 4 times. That was a huge hit. Basically, I wanted to get everybody together so I could play all of the games that I bought at Gen Con.
There you go. Clever.
So, also played Dungeon Busters, which is a fast, quick little game that's, I think of it as
Cutthroat Caverns light.
Cutthroat Caverns, very, 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 very light.
Yes.
It's a very, very fast game, very quick, not a lot of depth to it, not a lot of replayability, I don't think. It's just more, it's a very fun screw your neighbor kind of how dirty do you want to play kind of game. And then Bang the Dice game came out with an expansion that is actually 5 different expansions, and we played almost every one of those. There's one expansion where instead of everybody just getting like a deputy or an outlaw, there's a different kind of each one of those. And so you randomly get what kind of deputy you are. But then when you use your ability, you reveal who you are. So I think that's going to very drastically change the game.
Yeah.
And so we didn't play with anything that drastically changed it. But there's a couple cool, fun dice. There's the saloon is what it's called. And so there's a braggart or a loudmouth and a drunkard die. The drunkard die can't really do much worse for you than any other die. But there's a couple chances that you can get more beer to heal yourself. The braggart die or the loudmouth die, there's a chance you can get shot as you roll it. But there's also a chance, like everything else on the die is doubled. So it's like 2 Gatling gun bursts or 2 shooting at 1 or 2 shooting at 2. It's crazy. So there's a lot of really cool, wacky stuff. I don't know so much about the extra rolls. Oh, and there's a whole bunch of new character cards that sort of play off of the new modules that they set up. So I really had a good time with that. And High Heavens got played again because none of us adults has been able to beat Joe's son Josh, and Pete wanted to step up and got himself crushed too. So clearly a degree in classical literature is not going to help you in High Heavens.
Right.
And then yesterday, Russ and I had an awesome early afternoon of gaming. See, you kind of played hooky. You got a half day yesterday.
I guess so.
We played Vikings on Board again.
Yeah, we did.
Which is we played 2-player, which I'm very excited about because I think I can get Karen to play that because there's no dice or cards involved.
Right, it's not random.
No, at all. We played Dungeon Busters, had a lot more fun with a different group of people with Dungeon Busters. Dungeon Busters with a bunch of people who are playing politely is not a fun game. You throw one person who's going to backstab everybody into the mix, though, and all of a sudden the game is infinitely more fun.
Right.
Yeah. And then is it Dragon and Flagon or Flagon and Dragon?
Dragon and Flagon.
Dragon and Flagon.
Yes, the dragon is first, as he should be.
Dragon as he should be. See, there you go. Now we'll remember always.
Yes. Yep.
All right, Russ, what about you?
Not as robust as both of you guys. You guys have some pretty impressive lists there. So,
well, you've been out of the country for
as
a
Craig
while.
mentioned, played a lot of Dragon and Flagon, played a game at Gen Con with our patrons there, Bob and Chris, and then also played, and Nicole and Craig, and then also at Millie's, their local gaming establishment there, our local pub. So we're playing a pub game in a pub, which is sort of interesting. Then played Dungeon Busters, as Craig mentioned. Played Vikings on Board twice, once with my daughter, my youngest daughter, and once with Craig. She loved it as well. Vikings on Board is a great game. I don't think we mentioned it, but it's a beautiful game, too. The components, awesome. And it's about Vikings, and it's interesting that Craig likes this game because it's not Vikings fighting. It's Vikings basically loading merchandise on ships.
No,
and
they're
setting
getting
sail.
ready to go fight.
No, they're getting ready to ship merchandise.
Vikings
This is
don't
a
ship.
trading Viking game.
Right? They're getting ready.
No.
They're setting sail to go on a raid.
They're doing domestic chores.
Okay,
They're
whatever.
painting some shields.
You know what?
They're loading
We'll have to
boxes on
agree
board.
that you're wrong.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
All right. Also, of course, played Red
But
Dragon.
not only is the game beautiful, though, we should say it's got some of the best box control I've ever
really
seen in my
does.
life,
Yeah.
including
Yeah.
there's a con exclusive that you get these tokens for bidding, and the tokens are just little tokens.
Right.
But on the big demo board, there are these beautiful shellacked wooden barrels,
Right.
with the logos and the values at the top and the bottom. And if you bought it at Gen Con, you got these barrels. So you got 16 barrels. And I was like, I opened the box. I saw, oh, wow, this is amazing. And not only that, but it's got all these 3D cardboard ships, and they're all built for you when you open the box up. So I opened it and went, oh, look at this box control. The shame is I've got these 16, but wait a minute. And built into the box control are slots for these 16 convention-only components that I thought was crazy.
It was pretty cool.
It was.
And then also I played D&D also. We ran a game for 3 of the Geek Nation tour guys there. Unfortunately, I wrote everybody's name down and then promptly lost the paper, so I really, really apologize. But we had a great time in my little event, and I used it as a chance to show off some of the ways I use technology to make my D&D games easy to set up and play, and everybody seemed to really enjoy it, and had lots of questions about the things the apps and the different, and Realmworks and everything else I use. So it was a lot of fun, and we had a great time. Really short little scenario. There was backstabbing, there was trickery. It was all good. So that's what I'm playing lately. What about modeling, Curt? You doing any painting or anything lately?
In the D&D game, I made my own mini out of some plastic and wood that I was able to pop together because I needed a pirate. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, the DM was amazing. Has a character that's based on Prince. Right. It's Fenric the Longfeather is his name, and he's got a little hand crossbow. And I happen to be a sailor as well, of course, right? So Fenric left me a present, and it was a set of lady leather armor that I was able to squeeze into, but it is absolutely crimson red and, totally under the cherry moon. Yeah. So my mission, should I choose to accept it, is to repaint that mini now so I can be wearing my beautiful under the cherry moon leather.
Nice.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Now, Curt,
that'll count as modeling on so many different
Curt,
levels.
Let me ask you this.
It's fun.
Let me ask you this, Curt. So when your character is reduced to 0 hit points, is that in fact the sound of Dubs crying?
Oh, I would say it is the sound of when
that's
Dubs
what it
cry.
sounds like.
That's what it sounds like.
Yes. That's
yes.
what it
Dubs
sounds like.
Cry.
There you go.
I'd have to say, I might use that.
Okay.
Adam will love that.
That's
perfect.
That's a nickel every time you use it. Just
thank you. Yes.
All right.
Patreon.com.
Right.
Russ, what about you for modeling?
Oh, okay. Well, here's the thing. So I am preparing to model. Mm-hmm. I am getting ready. I have not done any because basically I went to Gen Con and then I had to go on this European vacation, literally. Look, kids, Big Ben Parliament. But then, thanks to Craig, and I blame Craig entirely for this, we went to our other local gaming store, Adler Hobby, and they're sitting there. So at Gen Con, Craig was reasonably responsible. He got all excited about Conflict 47, but he restrained himself to just buying the rule book.
I did.
So then when he came home and on game night, we went out to Adler Hobby and saw the starter boxes there for the German and American forces.
Yep.
Craig was able to con me into buying one of these. So I did. Mm-hmm. So I bought the German starter box. For those who don't know, Conflict 47, it's by Warlord Games. It is their alternate history World War II game, but heavily based on bolt action rule set, right? So bolt action rules. What's really cool about it is you can use the bolt action historical models combined with the new alternate history models, and now you've got, what's cool about it is they've got this whole line of basically core armies ready to go from all their bolt action stuff, and now you just got to add a unit here, a unit there, of maybe some werewolves, maybe some zombies, maybe a walker or two, and some other crazy technology stuff, and boom, you've got your weird war ready to go. Yeah. And if you like bolt action rules, well, boom, the rules are going to be fun too. So Craig sucked me in with this thing, and I bought all that, and we'll let you know how that turns out in future episodes, I'm sure. Now, also, the other thing I've been talking a lot about lately is my desire to learn how to use an airbrush. Mm-hmm. So whilst I was at Gen Con, Badger, the guys that make there's many airbrush manufacturers, but they're one of the more well-known ones, particularly in miniature gaming.
They're the ones who really make the push at miniatures.
They do. They're at Adepticon. They're at Gen Con. They were there at Gen Con. They had a really good deal on their airbrush and their compressor, so I bought both. And I blame two individuals on my decision to buy this. First, Menoth John, because he was on the show talking about it, but also Brian B. I'm not going to say his last name. I don't know if he wants us to, but Brian, when I talked about airbrushes a while ago and thinking about it, he sent me this really, really nice detailed email with all these great tips and all these links out to various products and videos on how to use this stuff, really boosting my confidence. So I've got this thing now from Gen Con, and this weekend, my daughter Rose and I are going to sit down and see if we can't paint some things with an airbrush. I will keep you guys updated on how that turns out. So fingers crossed. I'm very nervous for some reason. I want this to go well, and I feel like it's going to explode. So I don't really know.
I've had an airbrush in my Amazon wish list for about 2 years, and I just have not pulled the trigger. And I don't know how much. I spend more time around the Badger booth and the Iwata booth just watching those guys sit and paint. Like, I wonder if I could do that. It's so amazing.
They make it look easy, but of course, there's a lot of art going on there. But at the same time, I know from myself, I'm not an amazing painter, but I can do okay just with some techniques. And what people are telling me is there's a lot of these similar techniques in airbrushing. So I'm going to try this thing. I'll let you guys know in future episodes.
My strategy, my wife does fitness instruction.
Yep.
And she makes money on that. That's sort of her money. Mm-hmm. And my strategy has been that she'll be able to apply makeup with this. We'll be able to airbrush we'll take 10 years off her just right away. And she should buy this thing for that, right? I mean,
good luck with that.
You guys don't sound like this is a good strategy.
I don't know that I would pitch those exact phrasing.
The phraseology there, maybe not the way you want to go.
Well, no, she wouldn't hear that part. She hears halvesies. And I can do it. I'll help you out. Wouldn't this be great?
Okay. All right. Maybe
you don't think it's going to work? Yeah, it hasn't worked so far. Like I said, 2 years in the Amazon wish list.
Yeah. Well. Craig, how about you? What have you been doing for modeling?
Well, I will take the blame for purchasing the Conflict 47 models, noting how pathetic it is that you're trying to get achievements for buying models.
I'm just intending the model. It's achievements for intention.
Yeah, okay.
Goodwill.
Then I intend to give you an achievement.
Oh, good. Okay.
I have, in the interim, painted 54. Meanwhile, 54 Firelock Games Blood and Plunder pirate minis.
Now, he just got these things at Gen Con, people.
I did.
These are things he got at Gen Con. Okay,
I did.
It's like been 2 weeks since Gen Con, and maybe a little longer. And he's sitting here now with 54 painted dudes. Any boats? Did you get the boats done too? While I was away?
No, sadly the boats were carried back east by somebody who was driving.
So
and I haven't been able to hook up with them to get the boats.
A nerd herder has absconded with your boats.
Yes, indeed. You cut right to the chase.
Which is fair because pirates you would do that.
True.
So I'm not really sure. The biggest problem was you giving your boat to a pirate. That's
true. That was probably a bad idea.
Yeah, I would say so.
It's
a loan. It's a boat loan.
But you know what? Technically those boats belong to the D6 generation, so I think they should probably be painted by the guy with an airbrush.
Oh. Okay, I could try that. Sure. Well, you might want to wait and see how these things turn out on my models
We'll
first.
wait and see how those come out.
Let me know, but I can try that.
But yeah, the Firelock models are great. They're one-piece metal casts. Cleaned them up and didn't have to put anything together, so that was super exciting. Mm-hmm. They all come on these really cool, very small bases. The bases are minimized so the models can fit on the ships better.
Right.
And very exciting. Very, very excited to get that game to the table. I just based 20 stands of palm trees and jungle foliage,
right?
Which should be really exciting. Thanks to Mike and all the other folks at Firelock Games who actually sent me the link to get all this stuff at a crazy price from eBay all the way from China. $5 got me 50 of these tropical bushes with no shipping charge. I don't know quite how that works financially and economically, but I took it.
Nice.
So I worked on that, and I mentioned Dracaris, that minis game, that the terrain was so cool. I painted up the two sets that I bought. A fallen tower, which is kind of a cool watchtower that's collapsed. So there's a stub of a tower, and then there's the rest of the tower collapsed onto the ground. So it's a two-piece. the Fortress Gate, which is all knocked in and all old and corroded, which is really cool. The Tree of Fate, which is this really cool old dead tree growing above this sort of tumbled down ruin. An abandoned cart, which is a neat self-explanatory piece, and an Archer's Palisade, which is another neat self-explanatory piece. So really, really cool, amazing detail, all kinds of little things, and it's not like GW where it's all skulls everywhere. It's like there may be one or two skulls, but there's broken or abandoned weapons, there's banners, there's a broken shield, there's all kinds of cool little details all over all these pieces. So very excited. And that's all I've been doing over the past 2 weeks.
All right. What about other stuff? What about movies, books, TV? Curt, you been doing any of that stuff?
So, I'd have to go off with I'm going to start with One Punch Man. It's an anime, and I know there's not a huge amount of anime for you guys, but I know you've watched some.
I dabble. I'm a dabbler.
Yeah. If you've seen a little bit of anime, Dragon Ball Z, some of the Evangelion, any of the stuff that's really popular, which I'm not a huge anime fan anymore. I used to be. One Punch Man is probably the funniest anime I've ever seen because it's just a spoof on the entire genre. Have you guys seen it?
I have not, but someone else recommended it to me as well. So now that you've recommended it also, I think I may have to add it to my watch list.
It's amazing. Right now, Adult Swim has picked it up, and they're playing it on Toonami on Saturday nights. It came out last year. I watched them all. I convinced my friend in a drunken stupor to buy Hulu for a night so I could watch them all, and she was great. I think she still has it. But it's hilarious. 10 episodes, really good. The Preacher finale would be probably the next thing that popped in.
Yes.
I heard you talking about it before, Craig, and Russ, I don't know if you'd seen it, but
I still have not. But Craig has been pushing me.
Goodness, 10 episodes of deliciousness.
Was insane.
The finale was absolutely insane, and it puts you. You can watch the whole first season, and it puts you right where the comic books start.
Right.
So, no spoilers, but just at the end is sort of. You're in the same place as where the comic books are beginning, as far as I can tell. So, but that's a show that's unlike any other. Every once in a while you see something that you go, "Wow, that's really different," and this is one of those shows. So,
now, is this a very grown-up show, or could kids watch it?
No, kids cannot watch it.
Okay.
I wouldn't.
Just good to know.
I wouldn't let my kid watch it. And he's 12 years old, and he's named after Thanos the Mad Titan.
Okay,
So
all right, good. All right,
I wouldn't let him watch it.
fair. All right, good. Good to know.
Yeah. I'm getting ready for the next wave of Marvel stuff as well on the movie side. I'm a big Marvel nerd, and just to see, I seriously, I was a huge Thanos fan back in the Thanos Quest, Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet days, and I did name my firstborn Thane after Thanos the Mad Titan.
There you go.
And so to see that come to fruition, I'm both horrified and excited because I'm waiting for Disney, who has been doing an amazing job with the genre, with the content. I'm waiting for them to screw it up. I'm waiting for the little singing chipmunk to come out on top of the stump and sing to Thanos or something, and it just hasn't happened. So hopefully
I think they've got this figured out. So we'll see.
Yeah,
but there's always room for error. I mean, they can screw this up, but I think it's so far so good.
Which brings me around to Rogue One trailer. So my story is that I grew up watching the first 3 Star Wars. I watched episode 4, the New Hope episode. It was on CBS when we had a Betamax video recorder, and I recorded it, and I was able to pause through the commercials. So I had a beautiful copy on our Betamax, and I came home in 1983 every day after school, watched that movie every day for 180 days straight. I watched that movie.
Wow.
And so I loved Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back is still one of my favorite films. Then the prequels came out. I have the same story as most people. I went to it 4 times in the theater before I finally came to terms with Phantom Menace was absolutely a piece of junk. And I really needed the Clone Wars. So I'm talking to my friends, because at that time then I'm an adult still trapped in a 13-year-old's body. But I'm talking to my friends and saying, Clone Wars has one chance. And that chance is that Vader goes on a rampage in the first 10 minutes, and the whole movie is about Vader hunting Jedi. and really turning the tide for the Empire, because that's what it needed to be. That was what the Clone Wars were. I had built up in my mind. I had read all the books, on Star Wars. The Zahn trilogy, still amazing. And I watched the Clone Wars one time, and right at the end of it, when Yoda's flipping around, I realized I'm never going to watch this again, and I just need to block it from memory. And so I did. I never watched it again, and then I never watched Episode 3 because I'm sure that I would not be able to afford the therapy that it would cause me to go to, having bridged Episode 3 and the movie that I watched 180 times when I was 10 years old. It just can't happen. So, then 7 came out, and I went to that after going to the whiskey bar for quite some time and had friends drive me. And 7 was good. I had a very nice return to a sort of a Star Wars feel in Episode 7, but I never did scratch the itch for that dark Clone Wars need that I really wanted Episode 2 to be. I wanted it to be what Empire was for the first 3, or for the Episodes 4, 5, and 6. The Empire was a dark movie with glimmers of hope, but it needed to be dark. It needed to be the plight of the rebellion at its darkest time. And I really believe, watching the Rogue One trailer, it's got the potential to be almost a noir story. So I'm excited about it.
I hope so. That'd be great. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Very good. Cool. Craig, what about yourself, sir? What have you been watching and
talking
reading?
about movies,
Yeah.
And just to go quickly through them, I saw Suicide Squad on my birthday, and I don't understand what all the hate's about.
Really? So you liked it?
Yeah, no, I liked it. I enjoyed
good.
it. I mean, I am much more invested in the Marvel movies, both because I enjoy the Marvel universe far more than the DC universe, and I just think it's been better. Well, obviously, it's been better handled for over a decade now. But as far as just a one-off movie went, I really enjoyed, even though it had moments of Ben Affleck in it, I really enjoyed Suicide Squad. I went and saw Star Trek Beyond. Is that what it's called?
Yes, it is.
The newest one?
Yes.
And I enjoyed that a lot, too. Although I have to say, damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a crack fighter pilot of strange alien craft I've never seen before.
Yeah, Bones did quite well in that role.
Yeah, he did indeed. The entire universe was saved by a doctor flying a pilot list. Oh, anyway.
And the Beastie Boys.
I think they did a good job having Bones and Spock really build their relationship in those, especially those flight scenes. So they've kind of set themselves up to be the triad of Star Trek justice now.
Yeah. No, I
really enjoyed it.
I really liked it too, and I actually liked the addition of the Beastie Boys. There was nothing wrong with that.
I actually told a few people that was the best Star Trek ever. It was better than Episode 2, and they were like, "That was not better than Wrath of Khan." I said, "I don't know, Sabotage right there. That was a scene and a half."
Is that classical music?
Oh yeah, that's
that was fun.
So good.
Saw Kubo just the other day. Kubo and the Two Strings. I really enjoyed that.
I did too. It was very nice.
I like the animation.
It's very
style.
dark. The animation style is crazy. The visuals are beautiful.
Yeah.
The origami theme throughout is just amazing.
Yeah. The storytelling in general is fantastic. There's really no way to talk about any kind of spoilers, and there's lots of cool kind of plot twisties in there. So
we don't want to give anything away.
It was good. I liked it. It's worth seeing. Yeah. For sure.
As I'm painting all these pirates, I wanted to go for some inspiration. So I am watching Black Sails again, and God, I love that. Not only do I love it, but the thing that happened in season 2 that I was like, that's crazy. This wasn't put out at all. They just all of a sudden decided to do it. No way. I completely take that back. Season 1 is filled with little hints of what's coming in season 2. I thought it was awesome and masterful. Really enjoyed it. I'm still enjoying both Killjoys and Dark Matter, and I deny Russ's refusal to see a dichotomy there.
Why do you need to keep putting these things together? Why can't you just acknowledge the fact?
Because they both came out at the same time, and I think they're very similar to each other. And I think you can like them both. I'm unlike you.
You can like them both as long as you acknowledge Killjoys is the best sci-fi on television right now.
Yeah, I don't think I have to do that.
Okay,
so.
Fine.
Sci-Fi Channel is advertising them together like nobody's business.
I don't
like
know
every
why
commercial is both of these things.
Now, have you watched either of these, Kurt? Can you settle this debate?
I saw just the ads. I have not invested in yet seeing those. And I'm gonna lay myself on the mercy of the D6 Nation court and say that I still need to catch up. and watch the best sci-fi series of all time because I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen Firefly?
I have not seen Firefly.
Well, then,
Okay,
yes,
so we're done here.
Yeah, we're
we'll
done
be
with
doing the
you.
rest of the show without a third chair.
Listen, right.
Don't pull my nerd card here because
pull the ejection seat,
I'm
Craig.
honestly splaying my heart out here, and just saying that is at the top of my list every time I sit down to consume a new show.
Yes,
and I just have not made it.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get half of Killjoys then if you haven't seen that.
Right.
Agreed.
I gotta do it
because it's let's call it an homage and be polite.
Yeah, let's call it. Let's call it. Someone finally woke up and said, "You know what? Was a good series that never got finished? Firefly."
Right. Exactly. And then finally, I finished my 7th book, which is crazy.
Hey, congratulations!
Thank you. I finished the first draft, but it's the longest book yet. It's about twice the size of a Wild West Exodus novel, and I did it in less than 2 months. So my brain is burning, and I've set it aside for a couple weeks before I go back and edit it down into a clean copy that I can show around a little bit. But that basically has actually dominated my entire summer. I've spent most of every day here in the pub, which is why it now has air conditioning, doing that. So that was fun. So what about you, Russ? What others have you done?
We've talked about Kubo.
Yeah.
The 2 strings there. Talked about Killjoys, still loving that. I've picked back up on Orphan Black, so I had been
really, because I gave up on Orphan Black.
I'm loving it still. I like that show a lot. It's really, really good. I just love the characters and how the actress handles all of that, and the lines are great. And yeah, it's starting to get a little formulaic because it's basically putting these various people in these situations. But I'm still digging it. I'm not even sure I'm following the main plot anymore, but I don't care. I just like the characters, so still enjoying that.
Okay.
Also, I just want to real quickly some shout outs. So, as I mentioned earlier, after Gen Con, I went, my family and I went on a little vacation over there in Ireland and Great Britain. Mm-hmm. And there were 3 sort of geeky events. First, a shout out to a wonderful gaming store in Galway, Ireland, Dungeons and Donuts. This was a brilliant concept. So I'm walking down the street, and there's this little, street placard out that says Dungeons and Donuts on it in the D&D font. And it lists all these crazy donut flavors. And I'm like, well, I got to go check out a donut shop that's got Dungeons in the title. And you go in, and it's actually a gaming store, like full on. And it's in this old, like really, really old brick building. So when you go, like slate stone building. So you go inside, and the room, and it's a multi-tenant, building. There's lots of different stores in there. And you go in there, and this gaming store looks like it's in a dungeon because it's all this great stone walls around it. And they've got gaming tables set up. They've got painted miniatures and little I mean, it's a full-on awesome gaming store. And there at the counter is this awesome thing of donuts. And as I'm walking in, this guy who also works in the building, not a gamer, is like, you got to try the donuts. They're amazing. So they don't just bring in like donuts from like Dunkin' Donuts. No, they home-make all their donuts, and they're crazy. Like they were donuts with like, very obvious things like Pokemon logos on them, to donuts with all kinds of crazy cream fillings and like little puff pastries on top and all this crazy stuff. They're delicious. So fantastic donuts and gaming. How can you go wrong? If you're in Galway and you do not stop by this store, you're missing out. Dungeons and Donuts. Also, I have to send a special thank you to Owen, who has been in the show several times. He was very welcoming us when we were in Wales, and he and his lovely family took us out for an amazing day of geekery. We went to Caerphilly Castle, which is this amazing actual fighting castle in Wales. The largest castle was awesome. It was this cool little kids quest in there where the kids could run around and try to solve these things, and it was really, the kids really got into it. Then he took us to Cardiff, where we got to see where a Torchwood base was, and then also there's this huge Doctor Who exhibit, which you're able to see too. So it was just an awesome day of geekery. We had a lot of fun there. And I also want to give a shout out to Norbert, who was in London, and we got to see him and his lovely wife Vilma, who Norbert's also been on the show, and he's out there still running and helping run all kinds of organized play for War Machine and Hordes out there in Old Blighty. So really great to have a nice family vacation, but also great to sync up with some folks that are really, especially Owen, I'd never met him in person, so it was really nice to put a face to the name and actually meet him and his lovely family. So it was a very nice trip, and really, really pleased to be able to meet some D6G listeners out there too. So good times. And that, I think, is achievements. Is that achievements, Craig and Kurt?
That's achievement.
I think it is.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, now I'm relegating to announcing this pap...
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey everyone, time for another App of the Ep. This time around, I want to talk a little bit about Heroes of Normandie. That's right, the app. I just got this on iOS. It is based on the board game of the same name. Now, I must confess, I have not played a lot, much, or really any, honestly, Heroes of Normandie, the board game. I have many friends who enjoy it. I have heard only great things about it. I have watched it played quite a few times. So when I saw this pop up on the App Store for a whopping, I think it was $4, it might have been $4.99, I said, I'll take the plunge. Everybody seems to enjoy the game. Downloaded it, jumped right into the single player. First of all, the very first thing that impresses you about this is the production quality. So this is not a barely done board game here with very little polish. Instead, really what they've done here is they've got all the art from the board game put in here. They've even put a campaign and a story mode here, and they have the characters talk to each other. The dialogue, it's not the most best written stuff at all, but I applaud them for the effort. It's fun, and it is kind of campy, but it gets you going, gets you sucked right into play. Also, the tutorial mode is fantastic, really very easy. It's almost too simple, honestly, the tutorial. It's very short, very trivial. To get you started, though, but I guess it's good for players who are not familiar with board games to get right going. I was immediately impressed with some of the really cool mechanics in the board game. I could obviously see them there, did a good job. I felt like I was playing a board game on iOS, which is a good thing in a very, very good way. There's a great single-player campaign, as I mentioned. There's also a fantastic multiplayer mode. It does a great job with a lot of the key game mechanics, like issuing orders. Nice little art when the tanks are hit, little smoke columns coming out. It really feels like a fun military sim of a board game here. I really like it a lot. The only thing about it, I think, is I think I'm enjoying it because I'm a board gamer. So I don't, there's a lot of good World War II games out there on mobile platforms, and I don't know if Heroes of Normandie really changes the game enough to be an exceptional version of, I don't know if putting the board game on iOS really makes the best military, World War II game on the planet. However, if you like Heroes of Normandie and want to get some practice in on your phone, it is a faithful reproduction of the board game. Really, really enjoyed it. If you're any kind of fan of Heroes of Normandie, or if you want to, even better, if you want to play multiplayer with a friend, definitely the way to go, especially if you're doing, you're traveling, whatever, we'll pass and play. Really good stuff. So that's Heroes of Normandie on iOS. Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep, a segment in which, hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show.
Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back, and as all of you, actually you don't know this yet, so we're going to talk about it now. So Curt was kind enough to introduce himself and say hello to us at Gen Con. And Curt and I got talking right before the big play-by mob. And Curt, you were explaining to me all about how you've started taking the idea of gaming and some of the things we did in play-by mob and applied them to business, sort of a corporate training, right?
Absolutely. Really, gamification is the term that the industry's been using since about 2008. And it really popped up at a DICE conference in 2008, and it was in the technical space. And so the idea of gamification, the definition of gamification, is taking game mechanics and using them in a non-game context, which in the case of Play by Mob is really about what I realized with Play by Mob after the 2013 Gen Con Play by Mob, which was known as the Hawking Incident, by the way.
Yes, the Hawking Incident.
Indeed.
Episode 132, I believe. What I realized is that you had figured out at the D6 generation a very effective method for practicing talking points or messaging continuity in a fun and engaging way. It's what I consider a very, very nice application of gaming mechanics in a non-gaming context when you apply it to things like sales trainings or crisis management trainings, or if you're talking about a PR segment where you want all your employees to have the same messaging. It's incredibly effective.
Ooh, so cool. We did that by accident, Russ, which kind of makes us the idiot savants of the gaming world.
Yes. We were doing gamification before it was a thing, or maybe after it was a thing.
Well, hey. He said 2008. What else happened to start in 2008?
Oh, this very show. Oh,
this very podcast. I'm just saying. But seismic shift.
So I want to get into detail, Curt, about why you were inspired to do this and how it all happened. But before we get to all that, we have to sort of, as Craig would say, establish your bona fides.
I would say exactly that. I was suffering from as much jet lag as you are.
Right. So my question for you, Curt, is, are you now or have you ever been a gamer?
So if you were paying really close attention at Gen Con, I had made my own badge holder, and I do some embroidery. I'm going to get into that a little bit, but I had embroidered on my badge Alpha Geek. I am absolutely 100% a gamer, and I have been since I was just a wee lad out on the dairy farm.
A wee lad
out on the dairy farm in western Wisconsin, milking the cows.
Oh, wow.
And I used to make up, my sister and I used to make up games. Generally, they were revolving around either chores or they were around the television, the family room. One of the games that I remember is we had this whole elaborate game that when I was, 4 or 5 or 6, we had a door to our living room. And if that door shut, then you officially had vacated the comfy chair. And so if you had to run to the bathroom or you had to run to get a drink of water from the faucet, you would run over and turn on the faucet, run back and push the door again, run over, put the glass under it, push the door again, and you kind of make 3 or 4 laps so that the door never shut. And that's not it's a good example of sort of gamification in a low tech context where there was an objective. The objective was get to the chair before the door shut and accomplish your task. And so that was kind of my earliest memory of being a geek initially. Another thing is because I was growing up on a dairy farm in the 80s, we grew up dirt poor, just small dairy farm in Wisconsin at a time when dairy farmers were going out of business. And my mom, who was an educator, was really smart about money. And so we had a collection of maybe 15 board games, which at the time, was a big collection considering that, you had Milton Bradley and Hasbro and those folks putting out crap. But we had a number of board games that we would play and we'd replay. So Sorry and Trouble and Monopoly and Life, these classic games. And when you're under 10, those were great. But I always had, so to further bolster my nerd credit, I had this need for fantasy. And at an early age, I was, headed to the public library and getting mythology books and always, reading. And I remember when CBS had Clash of the Titans, and that came on regular TV, and CBS was one of the 3 channels we got. Right. And it was amazing. And I, memorized it immediately, of course. But my friend, when I was, 9 or 10, my friend introduced me. He had an older brother, and he introduced me to the Red Box. And, the Red Box of D&D, and we played Red Box and Blue Box, and then right into AD&D. So pretty much the same story as everybody that ever has been on here. Right. To really be in a gateway. And I played D&D through, later elementary all the way up into middle school, where I then got into sports and kind of had to put my nerd side away for a little bit, although I did do a lot of yo-yo, it seems like. And then into college, this would have been the early 90s, got into Magic about the revised. So I had, 3rd edition and, some of the beta stuff, but dropped out right around Ice Age. This would have been, 94, 95. Kind of dropped out because I could see how much of a money sink it was, and I was a poor college student. And that's about the time that I really fell in love with, what I've been in love with for the last 20 years, which is, board games. And I was going to school for computer science, and one of my nerdy computer science friends had bought this game that was Robo Rally, which, from a mechanics standpoint,
right.
I'm taking like computer architecture and I'm understanding how processors work and memory and these things. And in this game, it's like directly applicable to these robots. You get your hand, you program your robot with moves, and of course it shoots and it does these fun things. And we had lots of wacky fun, which, looking back, it's a mediocre game nowadays, but back in the day, it
still has its loves.
It's still
people love it.
I painted all of my minis. My Twonky bot was so beautiful. My Hammer bot is epic. This was back before I knew anybody that was playing, 4K, 40K, or had any minis at all. Even though there were a few people that had some nice those 80s plastics that you just can't paint. Anyway. That was really the gateway game, and then Robo Rally beget Settlers, and Settlers beget Kalis, and Kalis beget Power Grid, and I'd really been in love with board games ever since. So,
and the rest is history. That's awesome. So have you ever, given your love for Robo Rally, have you done the giant Robo Rally game at Gen Con there, where they have the Mindstorm robots doing the whole thing?
I never have been able to get that onto my list. I prioritize Gen Con a little bit differently because I can play games most places or, on my own time. So I really look at Gen Con a little differently. But I always walk by and I always try and take a picture. And I appreciate, I don't even know which group puts that on, but I really appreciate the time and effort that someone would go to pimp out a game that heavily to make a giant version that's using remote automation. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, it really is. So that takes you to today. What are some games, to give you kind of a good sort of like a background of where you kind of ended up, what are some of your favorite games right now in your collection?
So I've got my gaming group is coming over tonight after we get done here, and they are really lit up to play Codenames Pictures.
Oh, great one. Yeah.
Codenames Pictures, that was my pick of Gen Con 2015. And it just goes to show the amount of innovation that's still available in the board game space. Vlada is amazing to take a word game, organize it in the way that he did, and really pull a Spiel the Jars winner out of it. And so Codenames Pictures was my de facto purchase headed to Gen Con this year. I did the Kickstarter on Scoville Labs. We really liked Scoville. My buddy did the Kickstarter on Scoville, and then I ended up buying it because we were kind of foodies in this region. And so the whole idea of any farming or gardening or making food, those games seem to always make it to our table for some reason.
Right.
Caverna's still very popular with my group. We really have an intellectual sort of perfect knowledge, want to have who's the smartest with the most number of bits group.
Got it.
And so it's kind of fun. From a cooperative standpoint, we play a lot of Space Alert.
Ooh, I see your Robo Rally roots showing up there. Space Alert's got a lot of that cool program.
It's like Robo Rally that
crack,
ends
right?
quickly. Yeah, it's on crack. It's so nice. I don't know if you guys have downloaded the turn processor for the base game.
Yeah.
I put that on the big screen in my house, and I've got the 70-inch flat screen,
Right.
and we can watch the little guys go around. And I don't know if it's just the more we drink, how much better it gets. But it's just hilarious to watch those little dudes, walk around on that. Couple other things we get, the Resistance makes it to our table a lot. We do a Tuesday night game night in the winter from October to April because we're in Wisconsin. There's nothing else to do.
Right.
And it seems like we always have 10 or so at the end of the night, and Resistance pulls up. From an RPG standpoint, I really hadn't played. I played a little bit of 3.5. I never got into Pathfinder after my AD&D days back when I was a kid. But I recently had, one of my buddies is a huge Critical Role fan, and he wanted to do the voices for all these characters, and he made a campaign. And the campaign turned into like this nearly LARP sort of play acting gig for the people that are playing. So, for example, go ahead.
I was just saying that's wow, that's serious dedication there.
We had a number of people spend multiple hours on character building so that they could come for the first night and then explain their character's motivation and their background and these long stories. One of the guys had he's a cleric, and he worships the Red Goddess, and he's got this big medallion of Sansa Stark that he wears, and then he's got a book that he has written the lyrics in his book to a number of songs. So, before he would cast Cure Light Wounds, he'd go, this comes from the book of Mariah, the Song of Love, and then he would read some lyric from that book. I myself created a character that be Giannis Shantyman. Giannis Shantyman be a half-elf of the high sea. And I learned to play the accordion, and I have a spell book that really is a song book for every spell that I know how to cast. Wow. So, if I cast Bardic Inspiration, yep. I don't know if I can cast it, but it's whoops, sorry. I can't do it.
Oh, he's choking. He's choking.
That's quite impressive.
It's like that.
Very nice.
But I kind of choked on the radio. I'm out of practice because we haven't met since July. But we have a number of folks that are really into it, and it's making a great campaign. And it's just a self-built campaign that our DM is doing.
That's awesome.
Sounds like
that's
you're
pretty
really
cool.
going out of the way. That's great.
I made a little mini that I didn't have. I looked through. I have the Reaper Bones 2 pack that I bought, and I bought like all of them. And I'm looking through all of those, and I'm like, I got to have something that sort of resembles a pirate in here, and I didn't. Mm-hmm. But my son had like one of these 100 packs of pirates and ninja, army guys.
You should always buy ninjas and pirates in 100 packs. Why would you not?
I don't know why they wouldn't consider selling them together.
Right.
So I found one mini that I kind of modified. I had to cut his legs off so it was the height of the rest of the minis, and I made a little accordion that looks like the accordion that I play, and it looks really funny, but it kind of suits the character. My character profile is a picture of it's John Belushi's face on this old grizzly line art pirate that I found. So yeah, I just from a nerdiness standpoint, I've poured myself into that game, and it's been worth every bit of energy that I've ever put into it. So
that's awesome. That's fantastic.
It's been good.
Well, so I want to make sure we get on to the gamification stuff, but clearly you are a hardcore gamer, which is excellent.
Hardcore. He learned the accordion.
I know, that's fantastic. That is awesome. So now to bring this together, I think we need to get just a splattering, if you will, a smattering of your professional background here, a little bit to understand where the convergence of a corporate trainer and passion for gaming sort of came together. So, what were you doing? How did your professional career sort of converge on this?
So I've got, I started, as I said, in college. I studied computer science, and I had a business minor. And so really looking at business value is what I've done for the last 20 years. I've been a director of a billion-dollar business in technology. And one of the mistakes that businesses make is something like, I want to say 70% of IT projects fail. Mm-hmm. So information technology projects fail. And the mistake that people make is they try and implement some piece of software without understanding what the value that they're really going to get out of it. And so where this really converges for me, having this gamer history, is gaming is about an objective. It's about having fun. It's about playing the rules as written and really collaborating. So especially when you look at the hobby gaming market, what we're all in, what we have passion for, it's about those things. In the video game industry, it's a little bit different. Gamification is more, it can be about collaboration in the case of like the MMOs, and those are great games. It's obviously about objectives, but it's very inward focused. It's more about kind of the pizzazz of the 3D nature or the immersive world or the interactions that seem a little bit artificial. And I think one of the reasons that we like hobby game market is that you have real human interactions. There's another person that's across from you. There's not some computer AI, and you're not as much on a rail unless you've got a really bad DM in a RPG that you're doing. You have more freedom, so you get more sandbox, which is there. So in the professional world, gamification, as I said, in 2008, really started to push forward as a concept. And there are authors and speakers and designers. Jane McConigal is one of my favorite. She's, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Super Better TED Talk. There's a great TED Talk that she does about using games for social motivation to make, she used it to make herself better and overcome illness. And really, her design is in the computer side. So as I've gone through in my technical career and seen these business problems pop up, the answer from a technologist is always technology. And in 2008, just about the same time you guys started the show and gamification popped, about that same time, I was paying attention at a former business. I was paying attention to this problem I just call the communication problem. And the HR department, the internal employees were not getting effective communication. We would do these corporate surveys, and we had great benefits, and we had excellent mission, but from a communication standpoint, we just fall right off the table, and you don't communicate effectively. So back then, my solution, of course, as a technologist and looking forward back then, my solution was to implement technology. And I really went after a unified communication system. So this is getting a little bit too technical probably, but unified communication is where you have instant messaging and email and faxing and your portal and sort of all of it together in one interface. Now we get that all on our phone. But back in those days, there weren't those kind of solutions as much, really converging all of these different communications. Implemented a system that anyone could use anywhere to do anything, and it's amazing, but it didn't move the communication number. It helped us in other ways, thank goodness, but from a business value standpoint, it really didn't solve the communication problem. So I started digging into the communication problem and found out it's not communication. We were communicating effectively. Our HR department was taking out, here are our new goals, or our management was pushing out, here are the things we want to achieve, and here's what you need to do to achieve them, line working employees. But the realization was kind of like Office Space. You're watching Office Space, this movie. And the guy's talking to the Bobs, and he says, I spend maybe 15 minutes of real work a week because most of the time I'm just kind of sitting there and, I don't have any interest in this. It means nothing to me. And the Bob's answer are, well, we're not saying we can do this, but, what if there was some kind of stock option? And his answer is, well, maybe. That would help. And what we know now, and if you study gamification or you study psychology of workers or motivation, what we know now is that compensation really is, if you have enough money to take money off the table, it ceases to become a motivator. So, you need enough money that you don't have to worry about money. And when I say that, I mean like taking care of your needs. You're not going to buy every model for every army that you want, Craig, sorry. But you have to take enough money to take it off the table. After that, people need meaningful work, they need a respect, and they want to have recognition. They actually want to accomplish something. Huh? Oh, you want to accomplish something now. So I'm studying this. At the same time, I'm trying to solve this communication problem. In the meantime, I'm studying gamification, and I'm a gamer in the low-tech space. I'm looking at these software packages like Bunchball is one that it's out there, and it's a software package where you can earn badges and you can get levels and you can have peer endorsements, sort of these game elements, but it's all software based. And I'm looking at it saying, how do I know that's actually going to change the behavior? Isn't what we really want? Don't we really want, as a business, don't you want your employees to want to desire the change? So they are invested in the accomplishment that the business wants. And then how do you get that? Well, why not make it a game? Let's use some of those hobby gaming contexts, some of these things, and the Play by Mob in 2013 is a great example of something you all just stumbled across, and is very effective at creating a desire to do better in a fun way, in a great way for employees. And so I had pulled together a few people at work and started sort of pitching this idea of we can use gamification for this particular process. And I think the first one was going to be our annual meeting. They wanted to know, business wanted to know what the owners really thought of the business. You know, what do they really think of the business? How do we really get their input on the products they have, or what our objectives are, or are we effective? And so we looked at that, and a few people that I pulled together, and we said, what really does this is kind of wits and wagers. We can stack the wits and wagers deck and really use that as a polling mechanism, record what people have said and what they voted for from do you like this product or that product? Is this one the best or is that the best? And get this feedback, and we're going to have a ball while we're doing it. Everyone is going to love it. And so, that was maybe like the first example of where I really knew I had something, as far as this is an idea that has the same value that the technical space, which is being flooded, but now it's flooded in the market with gamification platforms or mechanics that are built into software. No one's really doing in the low tech space, in the whiteboard and paper or the cardboard and plastic space, as we all love in the hobby gaming market.
Right. So that's awesome. So you found this need, and then you actually launched your own business. And
Engage Gamification is the business we've launched, and really the folks that are listening to this podcast are my best salespeople. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a job where you hate your alarm clock, tell your management to go to engagegamification.com and throw a request our way, and we can come in and really help business tackle problems. And our claim to fame, because we're not tied to software, because we're not into this wave of marketing that says you have to have big data, cloud, and mobile to do gamification effectively, we actually look at the business problem you're trying to solve and then use our knowledge with the game concepts that are common, very common as they are in Play by Mob, in the board game design world, and apply those to the business processes. So what we find is that we have a higher level engagement at a human factor. Remember, I started this talking about the technology, and the technology is great, and it connects us in many different ways with social. It's awesome. But when you really look at human connection, that happens in every meeting, that happens in every review, that happens in every business process that is adding value actually to the business. So
I'm looking at one of your charts here from your website, mm-hmm. and so I was thinking about this, and I can imagine what was going through your head as you sort of was sitting there and Play by Mob. So kind of, can you go through sort of point by point this little chart here, in an audio medium, obviously, and kind of walk through what you think, like how the concept of the Play by Mob as we did it in 2013, how does that really solve a lot of the challenges you found is that older sort of more traditional corporate training, for getting new ideas, new processes in place. How did Play by Mob sort of tackle this problem in a better way?
You bet you, Russ. So I did this. I did a session at Gen Con's Trade Day in 2015 that was gamification techniques for efficient and effective business meetings. And so if you're not familiar with Trade Day is the Wednesday of the best 4 days in gaming, so it's kind of the fifth day, and it's a little bit hidden. And if you get a Trade Day badge, if you're an educator, a librarian, or an industry insider. And so I happen to be the vice president on the local school board. So I'm able to sneak in Trade Day through my vice presidentship of the school board. But Megan Culver is the director that is in charge of Trade Day at Gen Con, and I've been hammering her for a couple of years now to add a fourth track, which is really for people that are in the business of gamification for things like business meetings or things like process improvement. Right, not software as heavy as software, but in this realm. So one of the things, in order to play at the session, I have people play 3 games that I have commonly used to improve business meetings. One of the game is called 1 and 1 is 1. Another game is called More or Less, and then Play by Mob. which, by the way, every time I put a slide in there that says, by the way, D6 Generation Play by Mob this year was Thursday night at 9 o'clock, which was a very good time. And you should all attend because it's amazing with you guys.
Well, I appreciate that plug.
D6 Generation Play by Mob this Thursday at 9 o'clock. All right. So the way that, and really this is a way I would encourage anyone to teach, and I'm quotey fingering teach, because it's really about changing perception. The first thing we do is play the game, and then I have the class discuss what might this game be effective for. So if you think about how this game went, I set everybody as one mob because I didn't have enough time to actually execute the entire game. But I kind of give them the context. It's more of a demonstration. And the task that I give them is they have 3 minutes or 5 minutes to come up with why Gen Con is the best 4 days in gaming. Mm-hmm. And so immediately, I've now empowered them to do that. I see in the session someone becomes the scribe. They start taking notes about why that is. Someone becomes a leader. They engage other people and ask in their group, who could do this. And they come up with their talking points, and then they flash up that they're going to be interviewed by Action 7 News, and they have to explain in a 30-second soundbite why Action 7 News why Gen Con is the best 4 days in gaming while performing sweet kung fu moves. Right. Now, the sweet kung fu moves have nothing to do with the messaging points, but it adds that element of zaniness that I really saw at you guys' Play by Mob. Now, traditionally, when businesses want messaging continuity, and so you look at Play by Mob, what they do is they type up their set of talking points, they send it out to people and say, hey, new sales staff, here's the talking points in the new product line. Or, hey, we have a crisis, we need to do a product recall. Hey, everybody that's on our PR staff, here are the talking points, and we want to make sure we get across these 3 things. And it's like the worst thing in the world when they schedule the training and you read that training agenda and you see there's going to be a role playing. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a business where you do the role playing training.
It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Now the first time I remember when I was a young buck and I was going to be doing a role playing, and now mind you, I didn't play D&D in college. I played it in junior high. Mm-hmm. And my context for role-playing was D&D. I didn't know anything else about it. And so I'm first new to a business, and I see that training where we're going to go over the new messaging or the new product line or whatever it was, and then we're going to do role-playing. I'm like, yeah! I'm totally bringing out my paladin. I'm like just jazzed about it. And I get in there, and we go over the dry talking points. They're on a PowerPoint, and then they pair us off and send us over to the shadowy corners, and they're like, work with your pair to practice these talking points. And I'm kind of stumped. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to just read them to you? I don't really know. Where's my dungeon master that's helping me out here? And basically, like a nun would walk around. Is that the corporate trainer turns into a nun with a ruler and walks around and taps on your desk and says, you have to keep doing this. And all you wanted to do as an employee was really just like hide, because if you did it wrong, they were going to make fun of you. You didn't really know what to say, and it was just no fun. That's still used. That's the de facto standard of role-playing today. Now, I've been in some trainings where they hire an actor and sort of try and bring in what I would consider an NPC, right, to facilitate those points, but it's still not very effective. So what I do in the gamification techniques for efficient and effective business meetings is I educate folks on the effectiveness of why Play by Mob is so much more effective than the traditional role-playing and feedback loops that you get. First of all, from an execution time, if you look at Play by Mob, you've got about 5 minutes of setup. It doesn't take that long to say you're a group, get in your group, circle your chairs, right? Mm-hmm. And that act of even getting people up and sort of moving and turning their chairs, that brings energy. You're injecting energy into the group. When you're role-playing in feedback and you say pair up, people feel like I don't want to be picked last. They feel like, am I going to get stuck with the person that I don't want to talk to? They try and facilitate that as quickly as possible, but sometimes it doesn't work out that well. From an effectiveness standpoint, when you look at play by mob, the players, the people who are presenting, especially the people who are being scored by you guys or the judges, are incredibly engaged. They are on it, right? From an audience standpoint, I consider that there's a little bit of a play along mechanism that happens, kind of like when you're watching Price is Right. You're always kind of playing along at home. Right. From the role-playing feedback, the traditional way to do it, you're really only self-motivated. And if you really think the topic is great, you might want to talk about the topic. Otherwise, you're just trying to avoid the nun that's telling you to get back to your homework and talk about the weather or the ball game or something else. In the traditional role-playing, creativity is criticized. If you didn't stick to the talking points, there's no mechanism to say, well, wouldn't it be better or more received to say it this way? That happens in the first part, the lecture, when nobody wants to pipe up. But in Play by Mob, creativity is encouraged. You're celebrating. You celebrate that Cyrus Kirby is Stephen Hawking, right? Even though he had to apologize, and it's an amazing clip. It's legendary now. That creativity was what makes that game. Now, here's where it really gets mathy, and this is where the business value comes in. When you look at terms of retention, on the traditional role-play and feedback, you're reading those bullet points off the screen while maybe somebody's telling you. You get one exposure there. Then, if your partner's good and you're good, you get 2 more exposures, right? Maybe you could push that to a total of 5 exposures because you're so good you even know how to critique each other effectively, right? But play by mob, the way the math is set up in play by mob, you give the topic. So in the case of my example, hey mob or mobs, come up with your talking points of why Gen Con is the best 4 days in gaming. In that group discussion, that's 1 exposure. And that happens interactively. They have to create that themselves. Sometimes it's based on a set of talking points that maybe they have ahead of time, but they're going to prioritize it for the scenario, in this case 30 seconds, right? Then you have the delivery. So in the case of 2 mobs, you get to see that delivery twice, right? We get to see it happen 2 times. And for every delivery, you have the judges' scoring mechanism. Now, your judges, who I usually pick the most knowledgeable people as judges, and I let them self-identify. I've got some sort of mechanics that I do there. But the judges in their rating, with you guys using the 2+ to 6+ system, I've used cows or stars. It really doesn't matter. The judges' critique is another way to reinforce those talking points, and it can be in a fun way. So, some of the best play by mob experiences are, listening to you guys kind of banter back and forth about whether you give a good score or bad. And that helps in retention. So from a math and numbers standpoint, Play by Mob is far superior to the role-playing and feedback. And then you get to the fun factor. Play by Mob's a Gen Con event. It's an event you can register for, and for $2 get 2 hours of entertainment. It's amazing. The role-playing and feedback is more like your high school book report. It's more like, I got to do this, and I got this assignment, and I just can't wait to get done with it. And I hope I get a B, good enough.
So you've done this. That's awesome, and it sounds fantastic on paper. And as a product manager myself, I have to kind of go back and say, well, the real proof is in. Now, have you actually used this with companies, and what has been the result? Do people actually come out of this going, oh my God, that was fun, and holy crap, I remember everything?
I've worked with ambassador programs where you've got employees that need to have the talking points or PR groups, and I've had them come to me after the training and say that was the most effective role playing we've ever had. I've had people come back 6 months after I've done the training and still be able to recount the talking points. That these are the important things, that these are the product points that we needed to see, because they're tied to a memorable experience. I will never forget Father Geek doing Stephen Hawking. It was burned into my brain. And you're trying to create that kind of moment, and when people are laughing and having a good time, they remember those things. Mm-hmm. So it's the power of gamification, and it's what really one of the things that gamification can do.
That's awesome, and awesome. It seems to me like it could be used for anything. What are some examples have you adapted it to for solving business problems?
So play by mob is really great, again, for messaging continuity or practicing those talking points or crisis communication. These are anytime you need everybody singing the same song, that's a very good game. One of the other games I mentioned earlier, 1+1 is 1, is a game that is for brainstorming. And so just to describe that one really quick, I have people have Post-it notes at their desk. Maybe you have a group of 20 or so people that have never been together. And I tell people to write a noun beginning with the first letter of their last name. Can't be a food or can't be an animal. And so they put that noun on the Post-it note, and then I have them stick it to their head and get up and mill around and meet someone else who has a complementary noun. So my last name's Parr, so I might have parasol, right? And your first name's Russ, I'll just go with that. You might have rain. So rain parasol would be a very nice complementary set. And then I have people create in the next 5 minutes. Once they found their partner, they can take their Post-it note off their head. Once they found their partner, they create a 30-second infomercial, sort of Billy Mays style, for their product, whatever their product is. And they have to introduce themselves to the group and sell us their product. What do you guys think that would be good for?
Well, it could be good for a lot of things, really. First of all, it gets you collaborative thinking.
Good icebreaker.
It's a good icebreaker. It's also good for if they're actually selling real products. It gets them primary messaging and focused on the key values in the product.
Bing, 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 bing. You guys win. So, and this is basically what I do. Large team formation, icebreaker, mixer, or brainstorming warm-up.
Yep.
You can also use it for ideation if it's real products. Like you said, as a product manager, you might want to use this for ideation and innovation. And so I have, at Engage Gamification, I work with a lot of folks, and I have just a number of these in my pocket that I can whip out at any time for the context of business. Another thing that we'll work with is companies that are either Kaizen, Six Sigma, or Lean,
right.
Which are all process methodologies. We can take a process that, and if you're into those things, if you know anything about them, a lot of times they just kind of are lightly toasted white bread. Right. They're Elroy Blues food, and they're great, but wouldn't it be nice to put a little butter and jam on that and really create something that can engage the workers to drive up satisfaction during the day and innovation and productivity, right? And so I've got a number of things too that we can pull out to use dependent on the specific process. So what we'll come in and do is look at a nice process and then say, how can we apply game mechanics? How can we apply game mechanics or game elements to this to drive up the productivity or really engage your employees to make it a better workplace?
Love it. That's awesome. Well, Curt, thank you so much for sharing how you've used this technique. I think it's fascinating.
I think it's proof that we're idiot savants. That's right.
You know what, you guys, it's amazing how you stumble into things when you're in the context. And I think that you've come up with this and not even known its power. It's really, I was always very good at Legos when I was a kid. Now, I couldn't build anything like out of wood as a kid, but I could make everything out of Legos. And so, my power is really that I can take a few concepts, kind of stick them together and make them an innovative thing and really use what people have built and sort of take it to the next level. Oh, if you add this and this, all of a sudden you have this great context and look at what it's doing. We could change the world. I have a belief. I think there are a number of people, when I talk about engagement, the definition of engagement is that you really believe in the mission and you believe in what your company's doing. The average engagement score for employees in the United States is 17%. So that means 17%, sorry, not engagement score, but the average number of employees engaged in their business are 17%. 17% of employees really care whether the business succeeds or fails. They care what they're doing or not. That means the vast majority of employees just don't even have a stake in the game. Right. And so when you look at gamification as a method, and by the way, done wrong, gamification can go, if it's not authentic, gamification can go way, way south. It becomes coercive. So you really have to have an authentic game that is fun to play and accomplishes something that is a meaningful goal, not just I'm going to put more money in the CEO's pocket. Right. So there's an art to this that designers know how to do. But I really believe that gamification can take that number and move it way, way north. I think that we could see a world where people wouldn't have to hate their alarm clock when they wake up in the morning and, God, I got to go do my day job, and I just wish I could do something that was fun. So I think that world is coming, and I think that the hobby game market is a good indicator. I actually think the technology game market is a good indicator of how life is expected to be in the next 20 years.
Well, it's awesome, Curt, and thank you so much for sharing, because it's funny because I solve a lot of I work to solve a lot of the problems you're describing, and I've never really. It's just like I'm looking in the mirror going, "What an idiot!" Because I've never really thought about the things I do with the D6G and sort of applying them. It's sort of like I have two different hats that I wear, and I never really kind of merge them together. It's very.
Don't be so hard on yourself. It's not idiot. It's idiot savant.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
That's the whole point.
Definitely Wobner's on it for.
Yeah. See?
Yeah. Russ, it's a good point, and I think that this is one of the areas when I founded Engage Gamification, I looked around, and I have a lot of friends in the industry that are in the game industry, and I'm not half the designer of most of those guys. I'm not I'm not a game designer really at all, but I understand how mechanic works. Like I'm a Lego putter together guy, right. And when I founded Engage Gamification, I really think that most of the professionals that are especially in the cardboard business, I would hope they could use their skills in a business context, and actually we could see a wave of business that's much like the wave we've seen in the last 20 years of board games, of innovation in the board game space really come into business. And they don't need to be these high-tech gamification systems. Those are way too shiny for the average Joe.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. Well, and you see that too. I'm going to nerd out with you now for a minute. You see that actually in practical application too of techniques like Agile and Kanban, where they actually you kind of require the groups to work with stickies and Post-it notes and stay away from technology, because it's just there's something more tactile and effective about working with physical realm than digital realm. So I think you're right.
Have you ever? We're working on right now developing a deck builder technique that you could use for backlog prioritization. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like the same process. Yeah, the mechanic would be the exact same thing. It's just making that game work. Something like Dominion, right, would work for agile processes.
Oh, totally.
Right,
yeah.
It's get rid of the crap. Put in your hand the good stuff so you have better stuff to do. I mean, it's the exact same thing. And how much fun would that be? Instead of if you're in the agile space, those backlog grooming meetings are like, sometimes they're great if you've got a good scrum master, you've got a good facilitator, but sometimes you're just like, oh my God, I cannot believe this. So yeah, for prioritization, that deck building concept is one that I think I don't have something baked yet, but it's something's going to pop out of that, and I'll have that in my toolbox.
Really got me thinking now. The deck building model, like the Dominion model for process improvements, is the way to go, because every card is part of your process, and you just swap them out for better parts. Oh man, now you got me. I'm going to
Russ,
Curt, for God's sakes, man, this is brilliant.
So this is what happened right before our Gen Con event with these two in the hallway.
It is actually, and I am lit up about it. And again, engagegamification.com if you want to contact me. If you're a designer, I'm not in need of designers right now. What I need are salespeople that are in with their businesses saying we should be using gamification in a low-tech way to improve our business. We'll get better human engagement, and we're going to drive up productivity. And that's proven. We are going to see that. So, Russ, we should work together.
We should. Well, Curt, thank you so much for sharing all this. It's awesome. And now we got to get back to the serious matter of games. So we'll take a quick
matter of games.
Oh, serious gaming.
Yes. So we'll take a quick break here. We'll be right back with a big game review. I think it's going to be something about drinking and bar fights, but I can't be sure.
It's that Wisconsin connection.
Yes, exactly.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. This last weekend, our last weekend of summer before school started for our kids, we decided to go see a movie. And we went to see a movie that people are hating on big time. We went to see Suicide Squad. And I wanted to see it because I like comic books and I like comic book movies, so I kind of like to see them all. And even though people were saying it was horrible and awful and terrible and very bad and no good, we went to see it anyway. We took the kids, so we all went to see it together. And I didn't think it was as horrible as everybody thought it was. And I was a little surprised because I was expecting the movie to be absolutely awful. Like, I went in with like bottom feeder expectations that this is going to be one of the worst comic book movies I've ever seen. And it wasn't great. I mean, it definitely was not my favorite comic book movie ever, but I thought it had some really good moments. And like many people have said, I thought Harley Quinn was fantastic. She really stole the show. We could have just done a movie with her and it probably would have been great, but then they had everything else going on. And it wasn't even so much all the characters and all the actors and trying to put all those different stories into one movie, which is always a challenge to take and try to do all these sort of creation stories, the origin stories rather, in the first minute and a half of the movie so we know who everybody is and we can be sympathetic or hate everyone depending on your point of view, is really hard to do. They pull it off kind of, sort of. I mean, you get enough to know about the characters, but it was one of the weirdest plot lines. Like, honest to goodness, I felt like I was like 45 minutes, an hour into the thing before I thought, what are they trying to do here? Like, it just never really came together, which was kind of weird. In the end, though, I liked the movie overall. I wasn't disappointed that I spent however much I spent and then spent way too much on popcorn and M&Ms and large Diet Cokes for all of us because it was a fun way to kill an evening, you know, the last weekend before school, and I enjoyed it. But I'm curious what you guys thought of it. If you went to see it and you loved it, tell me why you loved it. If you went to see it and you thought it was an abomination, I would like to know that too, because I can't quite figure out the people who absolutely hate it, what it is that they hate about it. Because great movie, no, but there are worse movies. There's like Highlander 2 people. There are worse movies out there than Suicide Squad. So fire off an email, let me know what you think, nwakeland@gmail.com. I would love to hear it. And enjoy the last few days of summer if you even have any left.
Well, it's the end of summer, and of course, as any teacher will tell you, at the end of summer, you start thinking about vacations.
You do start thinking about vacations or, you know, like looking forward to next con season. You know, this con season's kind of coming to the end here. There's a couple few left
we're
here.
winding down.
As the holidays approach, and you're like, you know, what am I going to do next year? Where should I go? Is it any good? How do I make sure I optimize my travel experience? There's really only one place you can go to be sure. As a fellow geek, you will be taken care of in the manner you've grown accustomed. And if you haven't grown accustomed yet, you will be spoiled in a manner you are not accustomed to, and that is to head over to geeknationtours.com.
That's right. No matter what you geek out about, they're going to have a trip for you, whether it's the stars or Game of Thrones or anime or history. Terrace has trips going all over the world all the time, and they're going to scratch whatever itch you've got. Is it Harry Potter? Is it Lord of the Rings? Is it Indiana Jones? They're going everywhere, all kinds of cool stuff. And, of course, let's not forget Adepticon, Gen Con. Yeah. It's a great way to do a con because you know you're not going to miss out on anything con-wise. You're not going to miss out on any hotels. You're not going to be scrambling around for any of that mundane stuff the rest of us have to deal with. And Terrace is going to make sure you get all kinds of cool local cuisine. You're going to see the sites locally, the stuff that the con goers, Russ and I were just talking about this. When we go to a con, we don't get to see anything. Yeah. You know, we're in the con. Well, Geek Nation Tours makes sure you get to see everything that's going on around it. It's a great way to travel, and you're going to be traveling with like-minded individuals who enjoy the same kind of things you would like. Play games with them. They're gonna get your jokes, man.
Yeah,
Nobody
exactly.
gets your jokes at work. You know that.
That's right.
These guys get you.
Exactly. The other thing that's cool about the con tours in particular is Geek Nation Tours gets you in front of some of the game developers, game designers, and other podcasters to really get that experience that you really can't get any other way. Feels like you're really part of the whole event. So head on over, check it all out over at geeknationtours.com.
This is the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Well, since we're on here, we're just post Gen Con, we got to talk about one of the hotnesses that came out of Gen Con here. And of course, one of my favorite games that I managed to grab at Gen Con was, in fact, Dragon and Flagon.
Still upset that I didn't get a copy.
I am so happy with this purchase. And I just wanted to go through and give you guys the overview here of this game and do a little review here with Curt and Craig. So here we go. So obviously this game was published in 2016. It was launched at Gen Con by our friends at Stronghold Games. Stephen Bonacore, the podfather over there. And it was designed by the Engelstein clan. That would be Sydney, Brian, and Jeff. And that is the order on the box, which is cool.
Yeah,
so I guess Sydney
nice.
gets top building on this one. So nice job, Sydney.
Yeah.
And this, for a high-level point of view here, the overview, this is a 2 to 8 player game.
Yep.
Now, Craig and I have played it several times. Curt, you've not played it yet. But
did not get a chance to play it, but I did watch the review on Board Game Geek, and I really, really wish I would have
you've seen the bits. Did you see the bits in person?
I saw the. I don't even remember walking by it. And so I did see them on the video.
I actually went to this. I went to Stronghold's booth, like one of the first things I did on Thursday because I really wanted this game. And typically, though, they have enough stuff, so I wasn't too worried about it. I bought a copy for myself and a copy to give to Owen, as I mentioned earlier, and it sold out by 1 o'clock on Thursday. So there was enough buzz about this, and it was just gone. The MSRP for this thing is $59.99, so $60. And we'll get into a second if that's worth it or not. But first, I think it's good to give you guys sort of the dramatic overview of the background of this game. So Curt, I feel like you've got this good voice for this. Can you give us a dramatic reading of the back of the box of Dragon and Flagon here?
The Dragon and Flagon is a tavern world-renowned for its magical drink, the Dragon. Legend has it that one sip of the Dragon can give a hero wondrous abilities beyond their wildest dreams. But with a tavern full of thirsty adventurers and only one flagon left, things are bound to go wrong. Prepare your magic and grab your weapon because there's only one true objective in this brawl, and it's not just a sip of the Dragon. Only one can win and emerge with the reputation as the greatest fighter ever seen within the walls of the Dragon and Flagon. The Dragon and Flagon is a game of chaos and mayhem for 2 to 8 players. Throw mugs, smash chairs, swing from the chandelier, sip from the legendary Dragon Flagon, cast spells, and pull the rug out from under your fellow adventurers as you attempt to build your reputation and win the day. Play as one of the 9 unique characters in a 3D tavern environment that can be set up differently every time. Multiple play modes add even more variety. Will you leave with the greatest reputation from the Dragon and Flagon?
That was really good. Well done, Curt. Nice. Sir.
I was trying to channel my inner Dragon Lance, Dragon Tail.
Oh yes.
No, what was the name of that?
Dragon's Tail.
The 80s video game.
Dragon's Lair.
Oh,
Dragon's Lair.
Where you play as Dirk the Daring, a fantasy adventurer.
Yeah, very well done. Now, it did sound a little like Dragon's Lair. Nice job. So there you have it. So it's a brawl. The couple of the big pitch points here, one of the reasons you'll be attracted to this game is, in fact, the 3D tavern environment. So it very much looks like a miniature game of tavern brawling, where there's actually 3-dimensional little tables, mugs, wooden chairs, and all kinds of little bits, and your little standee characters to go around and do battle in the tavern. So what's in the box? Well, let's talk about that. So, Craig, what is the sound that a tavern battle game box makes whilst being opened?
Okay, ready? Close the door.
Nice job. So yes, it is the sound of a tavern brawl in there. Now, inside the box, you will first notice there is a nice beautifully artworked double-sided game board. On one side, it looks like the floor of a tavern in a grid, along with a set of numbers around the edge that is your time tracker. The board is also reversible. On the other side, it's a giant pirate ship themed board, and that's because there's an alternate play variant where you can actually be doing a brawl on a pirate ship, and for those rules, you need to download them from the Stronghold Games website. Also included in the game are 4 wooden barrels. Now, when you hear me say wooden here, I'm not talking about tokens that look like wood. I'm actually talking about wooden pieces. So there's lots of wooden bits in this game. There are 4 wooden barrels. There are 9 wooden chairs, little 3-dimensional wooden chair bits. There are 12 wooden mugs. There's a wooden time marker that goes around the edge of the board. There are 2 large tables and 3 small tables. And these tables are actually little folding, nice thick pieces of cardboard with great art on them that fold together to form 3-dimensional tables that can be have the chairs put around. You also get 2 rugs, which look like actual thin bits of paper that are nicely color-coded. They're strong enough not to rip, though. And these go on the floor of the tavern as, well, rugs. You're also then going to get a lot of cards, 162 character cards. You're going to get a character mat for each of the 9 characters in the game. You're going to get standees for each of the 9 characters in the game. You're also going to get some treasure chest bits for the pirate game variant. You're going to get lots of plastic bases to stand your little characters up during the game. You're going to get 70 of these reputation tokens, which just track your essentially victory points and how well you're doing in the battle. There's a bunch of status tokens for the various characters. And there, of course, are these 4 giant end game tokens that kind of give the variable game length component to the game a little bit. And then, of course, there's the all-important Dragon Flagon standee, which is the cup of dragon fluid that goes in the middle. And funnily, also, there's also a plate of cookies token. So that if you want to play this game and you're feeling a little uncomfortable with your kids fighting over drinking from a flagon of ale, you can instead be fighting over a plate of cookies, that was funny. And also coming in the game is 1 rule book. So, guys, based on, Curt, you've seen the video and seen some images of what comes in the game, and Craig, you've obviously played the game. Yep. Do you guys think this is a $60 box of stuff?
I think it is a very well-priced box from both sides of the equation. I think you look at it and you go, 60, okay, and then you're happy with what you purchased, which generally means that someone at Stronghold Games, looking at nobody in particular, Steven, is really good at picking those points.
Curt, what do you think, based on what you've seen in the video and stuff?
I love having little physical things. So, the little wooden barrels were amazing. The tables that you could, jump your character up on the table and it would sit there, and then someone else could knock you off. I think that when you look at sort of the production values of a game, along with the mechanic and the fun that you're having on that, I could see this being in that $60 price range. I mean, if you look at Caverna, Caverna is like, what, a $80 or $90 game or a $100 game? I don't even know what it starts at, but that's just a bunch of tiles. You just only get tiles, right? There's not a huge amount of other cute little bits, and this one has it beat hand over fist. So
I agree. I think what comes in the game is a good value, especially when you consider all the wooden bits, which add a lot of cost. I also like the fact that they didn't just cheese out. I mean, it's it's an 8-player game potentially, where there's 9 different characters to choose from. All these characters have a lot of cards in their decks. We'll get more about that in a bit. So I think it's worth it. I think it is a good $60 team. My only gripe, and this is a common Stronghold game thing, so I'm picking on Steven a little bit here, but they don't do box control. It's at Stronghold Games. So basically, pretty much, they kind of play the Fantasy Flight game route, which is basically, now they do throw in some free baggies, which is cool, but I like a little box control in my game, and we're starting to see more and more games. Like if you look at the same, I think the price point for Vikings on Board, Craig, is similar, right? I think
40. No, 40. 40.
And you're getting a lot of cool components there with really amazing box control. So
yeah,
the price is great here. A lot more cards, a lot more wood. There's very little wood in the Viking game, but
there's no wood in the Viking game unless you get it at a convention.
I would like to see a little more box control there in Strong, but otherwise, it's still a really great value.
All those mugs and the barrels and the chairs. There is a lot of wood in that box.
Yeah. I don't mean to be picky. And 8-player games are great, and this does play nice and fast.
Yeah, and 8 players is it's not. And, it's great for 6, but if you have 2 extra friends, you can squeeze. I mean, it's a great game. The more players, the merrier. Yes. It's just hilarious.
And it doesn't take a lot more time, which is really interesting.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So
the way they've done the game system, it's great.
It's about an hour no matter what. So let's set this thing up. So first of all, you're going to go ahead and put the board down, tavern side up, unless you're playing the pirate version. And here's the fun part. You're going to set the board up like a tavern in any kind of pleasing way. There's really not a specific set of you must put all the tables here and the chairs there and the rugs over here. So you can sort of have someone start playing house and decorate the tavern however they want. You're going to put down the tables, the chairs, some rugs, the barrels. The only special rule is the Dragon Flagon mug has to go in the center of the board. And so there's a little highlighted square for that. And you got to leave the starting spots for the players free. Otherwise, you're pretty much free to do whatever you like. And as Curt kind of hinted at earlier, the tables themselves, I should mention, have the grid on them also. So your characters can move from the floor to the table and walk down the tables and everything else. So you're pretty much, and it wouldn't be a tavern fighting game if you couldn't stand on the tables, let's be honest. So you set the board up to make it look pretty in any kind of pleasing, aesthetically pleasing way for your group. You're going to take the little wooden timer counter and put it on the 1 space. So going around the edge of this tavern board are the numbers 1 to they go way up, these little counter spaces that are going to be tracking time. And this is a game that is based on time. You're trying to complete the tavern brawl and get as much reputation as you can before the town guards show up and break up the fight. So to represent that, you're going to shuffle up these very large, nice, heavy, thick end game tokens. And there are 2 different places on this time track on the edge of the board you can put these 4 tokens. You can put them either in sort of the early game ending game, or you can put them at the late game. It just increases the game length. So you can play a game that ends somewhere around in the 20s, or you can play a game that ends in the number of somewhere in the 30s of turns, your choice. But you're going to shuffle these tokens up and put them face down in this area, so you're not going to know the exact game length. So one of these tokens has an image of town guard showing up, and that's when the game ends. But you don't know which of the 4 turns it's going to happen. So you know if it's going to be the first near the end of the game or the actual last possible turn of the game, which is kind of neat. Now you're going to give each player their character supply. So each person is going to pick a character they want to play. When you get your character, you're going to get a mat for your character. You're going to get a little standee to represent which your character is on the table. This standee, by the way, is double-sided with a front and a clear back.
Super important.
Which is super important because facing does matter in this game. You're going to get a token for your character as well, which is going to go mark where your character is in the time track. You're going to get an 18-card deck for your character. And these are all the different moves your character can do. But what's cool is you don't have to shuffle this deck. You just have access to this entire deck, well, except for 1 card, almost the entire game. So it's not a random game of like what small part of my moves do I have access to. You always have access to all your moves. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. But what's also cool is these decks are character specific. So the cleric has different kinds of moves than the druid, who has different kind of moves than the fighter. Right?
The majority of the deck is the same for everybody. And then you've got probably, I think, 4 or 5 cards that are different. Cards, yep. So a really nice, flavorful mix of stuff that you're going to be familiar with no matter who you're playing. And then it's not too hard to master what each individual character is capable of, because you've got the majority of stuff that everybody can do, and then you've got your cool stuff that gives you some flavor.
Right. You're also going to get a number of status tokens that go on your character's mat, usually 1 to 3 depending on the character. More about those a little later. And you're going to get 20 reputation points for each character on their mat. So this is important because what's interesting about this game is you're really trying to end the game with the most reputation points. Each player starts with 20. Now, to gain reputation, you're going to do things that are going to affect other characters, and they're going to give you reputation points from their character mat, and it's going to go onto your character mat. So the total number of reputation that's collectible in the game is based on the number of players, and it's got to be taken from other players. Now, what's interesting is there's no player elimination, and when a player gets to 0 reputation, they're not out of the game, but there's just no point beating that guy up anymore. He's already been clearly recognized as the most incompetent, tavern brawler in the room. So what's kind of neat about this is if everybody picks on the same guy, that only works for so long. Once he's good up all his reputation, he's no any more value. I'm not valuable anymore at 0. So now Curt's got to go beat up Craig to get more reputation. That kind of thing, which is pretty neat. And then finally, as you're setting up as the character, in your deck of those 18 cards, one of those cards has a red border on it, and that's called the Dragon card. And that's your superpower that you can use if you've managed to get to the Dragon Flagon that Curt mentioned in the intro there. So that card is not kept in your hand, but rather it is stuck under, just kind of tuck it under your player mat there, and you'll have access to that card if and when you manage to grab the Dragon Flagon in the middle of the tavern. So that's setting up your character. Now what we're going to do is randomize the character tokens. There's a token for each character that's in the game, and the person that comes up first, he's going to pick one of his starting spaces in the corner of the tavern. You're going to go around the table. He's going to pick a spot. Now, once everybody's done with that, you're going to take all those character tokens and put them on the number 1 space on the time track, and we're ready to begin. Did all that make sense, Curt?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Sounds a very simple setup.
So far, there's a pretty tavern in the middle of the table. All of our characters are in these little yellow squares in the corner, and we've all got our mat set up with all of our stuff, and we're holding a hand of cards. Now, playing the game is pretty straightforward, and it's actually a pretty easy game to teach.
Yeah.
The goal of the game, as I remember, is to end the game with the most reputation or renown from all the other players. And you're going to try to do that.
The hesitation there was because Russ spelt it Renoune,
Look.
which, interestingly enough, I think phonetically would be renowned.
It would be. So, in any case.
Well, he did just come back from
I am hooked on
over the
phonics.
pond,
That's right.
and that's probably
that
they
may be
spell it
how
there.
they spell it in the
that's
old
the-
world.
And also,
the
no
Middle
disrespect
English.
to Owen, but if you go to Wales and you read any signs, you just have to tell phonics to go home. They're drunk because
That's true.
Wales doesn't use vowels, and I don't know how you pronounce anything. So anyway, so that's your goal. Your goal is to go in, get the most renown by the end of the game. To do this, you're going to take actions, and some of the actions on your action cards will show you you're going to gain renown. Usually this is by, poking a guy with a sword or maybe stealing something from them if you're a thief or all kinds of different things you can do, right? So to play the game, there's really a three-phased approach. There's the planning action phase, there's the performing action phase, and then you move the timer marker and repeat, okay? So let's get into each of these phases. So the first thing we're going to do is plan our actions. Now to do this, at the bottom of your player mat, there are 3 indicated slots, a number 1 slot, a number 2 slot, a number 3 slot. This game's a little bit like the game's Robo Rally, for example, where you lock in your moves. But in this game, you're only going to lock in 2 moves. Remember that giant hand of 17 cards I mentioned? There's 18, but one of them is locked under your thing because it's the dragon move. So you get 17 cards. You're going to pick 2 of these cards now, and you're going to put them face down under your character sheet in the number 1 slot and the number 2 slot, with the understanding that the first thing in the first slot will happen first, and the second thing in the second slot will happen second. So this might be a card that says move, which allows you to move your character. This might be a card that says, swing your sword. It might be a card that says pick up a chair or mug. It might be a card that says throw a mug, and a bunch of other things. We'll get more examples about that. But you're going to lock in these 2 moves. Typically in the first part of the game, you're going to be moving and maybe picking up a mug or something like that, right? So you lock these 2 cards in. All of us do the same time. So Craig, Curt, and I, if there's 8 players, it doesn't matter. 8 players are thinking at the same time, so it doesn't really slow the game down any. Everybody locks in their 2 moves, right? Boom, we're done.
It reminded me of Wings of War.
Yes, a little like Wings of War.
Very
too,
much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or X-Wing. So you lock these things
X-Wing.
in. Now, next we're going to do is we're going to perform the actions. So now what happens is, depending on which player's turn it is, so we look at the time track, right? And if the time marker if let's say we're in time track 1, in the beginning of the game we will be, all the characters will be in the same spot. So we're all going to activate this turn. But if we're all in the same spot, we're going to have to randomize which character goes first. But as the game progresses, you'll see that as the actions are taken, different actions take different amount of times. So if Craig decides to move, and that costs him two time, we're going to move Craig's character face up 2 past the current time marker. So he'll move from, we were in turn 1, now Craig's going to move up to time slot 3. Let's say Curt just decides to pick up a mug. That only takes 1 time unit, so Curt's character will now just move to space 2. So that means Curt's going to get to go again before Craig gets to go twice. Does that make sense? So there's this little thing where you're spending, the different actions you're choosing are important because it not only dictates what you do, but different actions in the upper right-hand corner of the action card indicate how much time it's going to take to do the action.
Yep.
So we've planned these 2 slots. Now we're going to take all the characters in the current time turn, and we're going to shuffle them up, and we're going to randomize who gets to go first. So it might be Curt, it might be Craig, it might be me, and we're going to resolve our first action card.
Yeah.
So if Craig comes up first, Craig's going to flip over his first action card. And this is very quick because he's already done his thinking. Now there's not much thinking. He turns the card over. It says, Craig, you can move. You can choose to either just chain your facing for a 1-time point, or you can choose to actually move your character. And what's cool is on this little card that Craig turns over, it shows a little diagram of the facing of his character and where his character can move on the board. And the cards include text at the bottom with any special moves. So, for example, dashing, which lets you run straight ahead up to 5 squares, it has a rule that says you can't change basically elevation when you dash. You can't go up to a table or come down from a table onto the floor when you dash. You got to be on the same surface, right? One other thing to know about cards is that if your character is knocked down and the card has a purple top, you can't perform the action if you're knocked down. So some cards require you to stand up before you can do anything interesting, right?
Yep. And so you lose your card if you have something cool, but it's got a purple top and you've been knocked down before you go. You flip it, it's a purple top. All you get to do is stand up. No matter what time stamp that card has, it becomes a 1, and all you're doing is standing up and assigning your facing.
So basically, Craig flips over his card, does whatever his card says it can do, and then at the end of Craig's turn, after he does the action, you always have the option to change your character's facing. So Craig can adjust his character's facing, and then Craig's done. And now he's going to take his card off of his under from below his little mat, put it back in his hand. He's going to slide the card that was in the 2 slot down into the 1 slot. That's going to go next. And now we're going to figure out the next character that's got to go from the pool of characters that was in this time unit. Right?
Well, my token goes down, right, on the time track?
Yes, your token goes down farther on the time track based on the time of your action.
So if it was like a 3, then I have to count 1, 2, 3 spaces from where the little timer is, and I don't get to go again until the timer gets to that space.
Right. Does this make sense, Curt?
Totally.
Cool. So that's pretty much most of the game. And then after all the characters in the current time unit have gone and we've resolved what they were going to do and moved their faces down on the time track, we then go ahead and move the time marker up to the next spot, which is now 2. And we then all plan again. So anybody who's got less than 2 cards face down on their mat has to add another card to their mat and plan for the next move. Now, sometimes there's also, you'll notice there's a 3 slot on your mat. You can actually have 3 things planned, but that only ever happens if a stun result happens. And more about that in a second. So you're going to plan that in again, and we're now going to see which character tokens are on the time 2 slot. Those characters will be shuffled up. We'll have them activate, do whatever card they've got planned, and keep going. So what's neat is if you do things that require very little time, you'll be doing a lot of short actions and have more opportunities to plan. If you do things that require longer time, you plan after the time thing moves, but now you can't do any actions until the time thing gets back to your thing. So, and what you'll find in the game is that the really powerful moves take more time, and the short, quick moves are fast and you can be responsive, but they don't do as much for you, right? So that's really the core mechanics of the whole game right there. That's it. But let's talk a little about some of these actions, because that's really where the magic is. So some of these actions, we talked about move already. There's a bunch of different kinds of what I would call combat actions, but they take a bunch of different forms. So like you can slash, and this has an icon on that shows 3 red squares in front of where you're standing. And so any characters in those squares might get hit for renown. And there's iconography on these cards that show what the result of this thing is. So it might have a star on it with a 3 in it, meaning that you're going to give up 3 renown, and have a slash and a little player logo, meaning that every player that got hit by your slash has to give you 3 renown. So if I slashed and hit Craig and Curt, Craig would have to give me 3 renown from his mat, and Curt would have to give me 3 renown from his mat also. Sometimes there's additional iconography. Like, for example, you can do something called, you can actually pull the rug out from under somebody. So remember we talked about there's actually rugs in the tavern, and it says on the bottom what the prerequisites are. So you have to be facing the rug at the edge of it, and if you are, you can pull the rug. And then it says everybody who's on the rug has the following things happen. They give you 2 renown, they are knocked down, and they are stunned for 1. So if they're knocked down, they got to put their character face down. And I mentioned earlier that if you're knocked down and then you have to resolve an action and it's got a purple top, you don't get to resolve the action, which stinks. But also, if you're stunned, what stun means is there's a stun icon with different numbers in it. And if that has a 1 in it, for example, you must now immediately program an extra move into your mat. So if you're at 2, you got to put a 3rd one in there. Or if it's early in the turn and you'd already gone, but you have a free slot in number 2, you have to program now anyway before you can see what happens to the rest of the table. And this is sort of an interesting mechanic, because when Craig and I first saw this, we were like, I don't know if that really has much impact. But the more you play the game, the more you realize, oh, wow, when you're stunned, you really start to not be as responsive and reactive as you'd like to be, right? And it was really interesting, too, because some of them are like stun 2. Which means that, or stun 3, which you got to program way up. So if you're really low and be able to be really responsive, all of a sudden you get stunned, you really kind of got to map out the next 3 turns you got to do, which can really stink and throw you off, especially if you're getting shifted around or knocked down or other things that are happening to you. Does that make sense, Curt?
Totally.
Cool.
Classic Engelstein mechanic.
It's a classic Engelstein mechanic. It's a very clever mechanic, too. I like it a lot. Craig, did you find that the stunning was actually kind of more intuitive and actually was really annoying the more you played the game?
Well, it's very interesting because Randy had the exact same reaction I did when I played, which is, I don't get it. Why is it a bad thing? You just get to put your card down early. No big deal. I don't even understand its relationship to stun. And then when it actually happens to you and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen 3 turns from now. I'm going to just put a card down. The next thing you know, you're swinging at somebody who's not there anymore. You're falling off a table that wasn't there 5 seconds ago. And all of a sudden you really are, you will find, if you take a step back, you will find that your character is acting stunned. Right. As they're reacting to things that happened a minute ago. Right. Which is hilarious. It's very intuitive. Once you kind of wrap your head around how it works, and that you're not just it's you're like, normally in a normal game, you'd be like, I get to put 1 extra card down. This is like, you have to plan ahead, not knowing what's going on around you. which means you act like you're stunned. It's great. I thought it was genius. Once I figured it out and wrapped my head around it, I thought it was amazing.
I do too. And what also is fun about this game is that while you're programming these moves, and you're only programming like 2 moves ahead unless you get stunned, which isn't too bad. But what happens is there are a lot of cool moves that can change your positioning against your will. So, for example, one of the moves, you can push the table. So if Craig's on top of the table and he's plotted some moves to leap down onto the cleric and shatter them, but if I come over or Curt comes over and pushes the table, what ends up happening is, A, the table gets shoved to square, so now Craig's now out of alignment where he thought he was going to be. B, Craig gets knocked down, everybody in the table gets knocked down, and Curt gets some renown from those guys. So Curt just gets a cool move, gets some renown, like, oh, that was a good bar fight move, mate. Meanwhile, Craig's now out of alignment, his face down in the dirt. He might not be able to do his action if it's the wrong action. And even if it's the right action, and he can actually do it even though he's knocked down, he's still got the problem where he's not where he expected to be when he's thinking he was going to do that action. So you have sort of this thing where, like, it sort of makes it like a stumbling, drunken brawl, which is kind of exactly what you would expect at this point. So that's really cool. Some of the other cool moves are you can kick the barrels. So when you pick things up, let me get to pick up for a second. So you can pick up a mug or a chair, and when you pick something up, and this is an action, you put it on your mat, indicating you're holding it. You can then use the action to throw, which allow you to fling these things, and they do different amounts of damage and have different impact if it's a mug getting hit by a mug versus getting hit by a chair. What's kind of neat is after you throw them, they're removed from the game. So basically the chairs and mugs shatter and get destroyed as you fight. The barrels cannot be picked up, but the barrels can be kicked, and then they basically roll across the floor, and of course, much hijinks ensue as they barrel through 3 or 4 adventurers and knock them all down, and also score the kicker some nice renown there also. So that's really cool. And again, all this stuff's handled by iconography and some nice little text in the bottom. But then what's cool is the characters all have their own special cool moves that add a lot of fluff to it. Craig, can you think of some examples of some of the ones you've seen?
My favorite, the dragon card for the pirate is to call in a barrage from his pirate ship in the harbor.
Right.
That's awesome. The swashbuckler has a dance of death that allows him to just literally just swerve through the entire tavern, slicing people as he goes. He also has a really cool flourish his hat maneuver, which is a normal move that it's funny because it costs you get 1 renown from each person adjacent to him, so he just spins it around, and that's not so bad. But he stun twos everybody that hits him, so they're all distracted by the hat. The druid gets to mark its prey. Your flippin' cleric gets inspiration, which I thought was insane. Which allows most often you're going to see several character chits piled up on top of each other in a time slot just because of the way the game works. And is it 8 turns at a time that ability works?
So some abilities have a duration at the top.
Yeah.
It's a little clock with a number on it, and it tells you how many turns it's going to last. Now, any ability with a duration will have one of those little counters I mentioned earlier, these little circular counters with an icon on it that matches the ability. So the cleric has one called Divine Inspiration, right? And so when you play this action, I take this little token then, and I put it out 8 turns ahead. So what's cool about that is that ability now is in effect. It's like an ongoing effect, and it stays in effect until the time slot gets to the 8th spot. So now we have this nice little icon on the board that says the cleric's inspiration is on until then. And this particular ability is that the cleric, if you're on a time slot with a bunch of other players, the cleric always goes first,
which is crazy powerful.
Which is great. The cleric also has a really cool ability called Foresight, where she can hear from her, and she can play this card, and when it's revealed, the cleric can switch that card with any other card in her hand, but it costs 1 more time than is on the card. So basically, she's a little slower when she does it, but it basically allows her to pick any ability she needs at the time she needs it and can react. So it basically gives her precognition from her god, which is pretty neat, too.
Yeah.
And then my particular favorite of her, so Craig mentioned a couple of the Dragon Flagon powers. So where the flagon comes in the middle of the board is when you get to the flagon, and if you pick it up, when you pick up the flagon, you can then take that super cool red bordered card that's been under your mat since the beginning of the game and put it into your hand. And each of these are unique to the character, and they're super powerful. So, for example, the cleric's card of this is Tithe. And basically, every character within 4 squares of her, so pretty much if she's in the middle of the board, it's pretty much most of the board. If they have less than 12 renown, the cleric will give them 2. But if they have more than 20 renown, the player must give the cleric 5. And so it's kind of a neat thing. It's kind of like the blessing of the gods. You give to the needy, you take from the wealthy. But I was doing it. I had been brutalized. I'm in the middle of the board. Everybody's beating me up. I'm down like 0 renown. Everybody's got sucked up all renown. They're super powerful. And I did this twice in a row because they couldn't get the flagon out of my hands. I kept drinking from the flagon, and I just jacked back up to end the game with like 19 renown, which is I didn't win, but it was pretty cool. So because they kept beating me up again. So the problem with standing in the middle of the tavern is everybody's kind of beating you up. It's like a towel party on the cleric. So, but it was really cool. So these power moves are really powerful. And what's neat is, the first time I played the game, we kind of ignored the flagon, just kind of figuring it out. But once a player pulls off that power move, you're like, holy cow, I got to go do that. And what I do like, too, is normally you don't drop what you're carrying. So normally it stays in there. Well, there's one exception to that. The thief's got a cool basic move, which is she can actually steal something from you. Anything you're carrying, she can steal. It also gives you like 5 renown. It's a really nice move. But if you are carrying the Dragon Flagon and you take any renown damage or you're knocked down, you must replace the Dragon Flagon back in the center of the tavern. So basically, but what's cool about that is you don't lose the special card that's in your hand. It's just after you play that card, it goes back under your mat until you pick up the flagon again. So basically, as long as you've got a sip from the flagon, you're going to get at least one power move off, which is really pretty cool. So you'll once players see these power moves and see how great they really are, the Dragon Flagon fight becomes a real thing in this game.
Yeah.
So, Curt, does that give you a good feeling of the kind of moves and how the game sort of plays out?
Oh, totally. I feel like I'm there. It could be this beer in my hand. I'm not sure. But
like, don't pander to the host, Curt. It's fine.
Yeah, there you go.
So awesome. So that's pretty much the whole thing. So you're going to do your move. You're going to advance the time counter. You're going to plot and do it again. I think we've talked about a lot of samples of the heroes. There's clerics, there's a rogue, there's a druid, there's a paladin in there, all kinds of cool choices. 9 sort of, there's a wizard, kind of classics from D&D. I do like the nice breakdown. I've complained about this because I have 2 daughters, and a lot of games only have like one female version. I like the fact this game seems pretty evenly distributed between the male and female choices, which I like. We talked about what happens on the chairs can get thrown, which mugs and chairs get thrown. Mugs do some light damage. Chairs really mess you up. The pulling of the rug is particularly brutal, which basically knocks somebody down on the rug.
As is pushing the table.
As is pushing the table. As is kicking the barrel. So these are all fun things.
Oh, the barrels are absolutely brutal.
They really are. And this is where you can get evil, because once you play the game a few times, you can set up like little alleyways of perfect barrel kicking when you're setting up the tavern, and then you can try to lure people into these things. Like, I haven't actually tried setting up a barrel line. I usually have tables around the flagon in the middle, but you could totally set up a situation where there'd be some nice cross shot of barrels right through the flagon zone. Would be pretty interesting. So I could see people sort of getting into the whole setting up the table for particularly nasty things.
The meta.
You're at the meta.
The Donkey Kong maneuver.
Right, the Donkey Kong maneuver. I love it. But there's some really cool variants in the game, too. So even though, and the game's pretty simple, which is what I love about it. It's got that classic sort of Engelstein simplicity to it, but a lot of depth. What I really like about it is there's some nice variants. So one of them is team play. So with 4 or less players, you're going to be playing every person for themselves. But when you've got 5 or more players, you can break down into 2 big teams, and there's some nice simple rules you can do where it's really a giant reputation pool against reputation pool, which is kind of neat. But you can accidentally hit each other, and if you do, the reputation that happens there is from your own team is lost from the game. So basically, you're reducing the amount of it's pretty nasty.
That's fun.
Also, there's this great, as I mentioned earlier, there's a pirate ship variant on the back. But also, Craig, I discovered, so at Gen Con, they were giving out these little Dragon and Flagon coasters.
Yeah, you showed me.
And I showed them, and I'm like, these are coasters. They're cool, but they're just themed, and they're logoed like it. And it's just, I thought it was just a coaster. It is a coaster, but it turns out it's also the Dragon and Flagon secret room. And on their website, they have rules for this. So on one side of the coaster, it's an ale spill. And you can put this into the tavern on the floor, and it matches perfectly. And then as characters walk into that, they'll keep sliding across the ale spill, which can much humor ensues. But on the other side of this card is a poker table, and the poker table can also be put into the tavern, which is supposed to push 2 large tables together and put the poker table on top. And it allows for a very, very big table, but there's also some minor gambling rules that can occur whilst you're fighting on the poker table, which is pretty neat also. So cool. I'll have to try those out, but some neat little variants there too. And it seems like they're adding more stuff to this thing all the time. Yep. So there you have it. That is pretty much the core mechanics of Dragon and Flagon. Did we miss anything, Craig?
No, it's a great game that you covered completely.
There you go. So now I think we got to rate this game, and Craig and I will rate it using the normal D6G system, and we'll ask Curt to rate it on his desire to play the game after having heard this this diatribe here. But before we start with that, Craig.
Yes.
In the style of a drunken monk,
Okay.
please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Okay. I'm going off of the artwork in the game.
Okay.
Okay. Just so.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, I'm not even going to do that. Like,
Okay.
not in this environment. I got nothing. Low numbers are good. High numbers are bad. And Drunken Monkey says, good is bad, but bad is good. And low is high, and high is low. And in the end, does Buddha really know? No.
I'm going to go with not your best work on that one.
Sorry.
But
I'm
good
seeking
effort.
emptiness right now.
Yeah,
Right.
see, there you
Well,
go.
good effort, though. So, yes, the D6G rating system is such that it's a number you need to roll on a D6 that you will probably enjoy this game.
Yeah.
So if we say it's a 3+, that means most gamers will probably enjoy it. All right. So, Craig,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on Dragon and Flagon?
Well, let's see. I was on the fence at Gen Con watching the pile go down in front of my eyes. And then a Wakeland walked by and waved 2 of them at me. And I thought, oh, well, he's got one. He's going to give one to Owen, which is awesome. But he's got one, so we'll have one locally. And then, boom, the last one was gone. So the decision was taken out of my hands. I have since regretted that. Because I think this is a really fun game. It's fast, but it's deep. I really enjoy I enjoy that programming aspect of a game. I don't enjoy when that is the game. I don't like Robo Rally at all. But I enjoy if that is one aspect of the game, if it's baked into the theme and the mechanics, and that's why the game is there. Which is with the stunned mechanic, it's an awesome component to this game. I love it, and the stunned thing is just phenomenal. I love the asymmetrical elements of all the different characters, that everybody's got their own kind of unique, cool thing. As I think I mentioned earlier, Karen doesn't want to play anything that has luck involved anymore, so I think this is going to be really cool because it's all how you're playing your cards. And it feels like luck when there's more people in the room and you didn't realize that you were going to get hit by a mug in the back of the head, and all of a sudden, boom, your next 2 cards are useless. But that, you've got to be aware of what's going on around you. It's a bar fight. Somebody's going to hit you from behind eventually.
Right.
I love the art direction. I think it's a fun game, a funny game. Even when you're down, Russ had 1 renown at one point last night, and he was still having a blast because there's just so much wacky crap happening all around you. I just really enjoy it. I think it's an elegant game for an inelegant theme.
Right.
And I mean, every time you play, I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of really cool room for expansion with different characters.
Oh, yeah.
And different elements in the room. I think the pirate ship, I think it's genius that you flip the board and on the other side is a pirate ship.
Right.
And you can have a big giant brawl between 2 pirate ships.
Right.
And I just think the expansion abilities, or the expansion opportunities, I should say, are endless, with little things like the addition of a table, or big things like flip the board and all of a sudden you're fighting over 2 pirate ships. So I think it's just I really enjoyed it. I think it was fun last night because last night I haven't been to Millie's in a long time. There's a hardcore board game group. There's a hardcore miniatures game group within this larger group. And within the board game group, there's a hardcore, how would you even define it? It's like party games. They're always playing like Trivial Pursuit and things like that.
Yes.
And they came over and they're like, what are you guys playing? And it was like, well, this is Dragon and Flagon, and this is what it is, and it is what it is, basically. And these are your people, and the facing is important. And it was really interesting because it really is kind of a miniatures game board. It's another one of those miniatures game board game hybrids,
Right.
which is very, very cool. The fact that it, rather than plastic, that it's a standee actually makes it easier to tell facing and everything. There's no arguing because you know exactly where everybody's facing and where their back is facing, and it fits in with with sort of the aesthetic of the overall game. So I would say any gamer who sits down and gives this a chance is going to enjoy it on a 3+ with a reroll flat across the board.
Nice. That is a strong rating, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I'll go next, Kurt, and I'll let you decide after all the thoughts here. So I love the time mechanic on this. I know it's been done a little bit. There was a submarine game, I forget what it's called, but there was
the Red November.
Red November, which was similar to this, right, where you do things. And so it's been done before, but I still think it's really brilliantly applied here. Stun, as you mentioned, Craig, the programming mechanic just marries so well to this kind of game. I love that there's no player elimination. I think it's brilliant that the renown doesn't come from some kind of bank, but actually from each player.
That's
and there's
genius.
no player elimination.
Yep.
So it really means if you're having a rough time, people will stop picking on you because there's nothing left to take from you. Meanwhile, I'll just tell you now, if you're at 0, just stumble your way to the flagon, take a sip, and unleash fury. It's what
you have nothing to lose.
You'll be back in the game in moments. I love that the decks are very unique for each character. As Craig mentioned, there's like 2 or 3 moves per character, plus then you get your dragon power, and I think that is enough to really make the characters feel like they feel. The rogue will do annoying things and keep stealing your mugs. The cleric will start... the cleric has another move that just stands everybody up who's knocked down around her, which is sort of interesting. I'm not sure what the power move there is. It's very cleric-y, though. I don't know what it does.
Does it give you renown for helping everybody?
I have to check again. I'm not sure.
Or can you not get renown from a knockdown character?
No, but maybe what it does is it probably messes up maybe distracts people from you. I don't know.
Or it's incredibly powerful in team play.
There you go.
That would be true.
Yeah, probably in team play. There is, as Craig mentioned, no luck. I love that aspect of the game. I mean, there's imperfect knowledge. You don't know what your opponents are going to do. You don't know exactly when the game's going to end. And I love that part too. Having the random game at the end you don't know, should I might as well play a long time maneuver because it's going to be the last turn of the game, or should I do 2 short tricks and try to run up and get one last, kick on somebody or something. And as Craig mentioned, the replayability is fantastic. The game's going to be different every time depending on how you set the tavern up. There's 9 different heroes. They're all very unique, and you're not always going to play an 8-player game. So 4 or 5 players, you can play different heroes every time. And then, of course, you have the option to flip it over and play a pirate boat. It even comes with tokens for treasure chests because you're basically fighting over the treasure, which is really cool too. So lots of stuff here to like. I think when you factor in the replayability, you factor in the number of players, $60 is a no-brainer for this. I am going to say this is also a 3+ with a reroll. It is a fantastic game.
Yep.
I'm not really sure why anybody wouldn't like it, but unless maybe they just really, really, really don't like tavern fights. So Kurt, after hearing all that...
And it's even got the cookies in case you got that against it.
Yeah, exactly. So Kurt, what do you like about this, and what do you think your rating is to want to play it?
So one of my favorite games to make it to the table for my group is Earth Reborn, and that was also a characterized game it's sort of a miniatures game. It's got a random, not a random, but a programming and reveal aspect to it. It's definitely a board game, but it feels like the commentary that came with that game was, boy, it feels like they put an expansion in with the base game. Mm-hmm. And the more I hear about this game, the more that I've kind of watched and listened to you guys experience, it feels like they put an expansion in with the base game. And so I think back to the value question, that justifies the value. $60 is a no-brainer if it's going to make the table. One of the reasons that I don't really like Earth Reborn is it's basically a 2-player game. You can play with a few more, but it does not scale well. And I've been kind of sitting here thinking, and I had picked my rating before you guys did, but I also would give it a 3+ with a reroll for the same reasons that you all said. Mainly because it's time-bound. You're going to have a fairly quick game. For an 8-player experience that's going to be that engaging, those are rare finds. Bang is one of those that you can get out just to look at, whether it's the dice game or the card game. But this is going to be a lot more strategic, even though you have imperfect knowledge. So I think it's definitely worth it. 3+ with a reroll.
Cool. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the show. We really, really appreciate it.
Hey, it was my pleasure. This was great. I have listened to you guys for a while, and I really enjoy being the third chair. Hope I can come back someday and tell you all the success of Engage Gamification.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yes,
love to have you
and thank
back
you
on.
for validating our genius with Play by Mob.
It is amazing. It's such
our
a great
humility.
game.
So Curt, thanks again. And if folks want to find out more about what you're doing and what you're up to, where can they go on the internet to figure this out?
EngageGamification.com is my website, and I've got a form there to be contacted, whether you're looking to have me come into your business or into your environment and use gamification to increase productivity or employee satisfaction, or if you're a designer and you're looking for some opportunities that aren't particularly just in the board game world, but you'd like to be in the business world and do consulting using gamification in that kind of cardboard and whiteboard and classic sense. I'm networking right now and getting the brand out there and building up this particular industry, which I think is going to be amazing.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thanks again, Curt, and we hope to have you on again in sometime in the future.
Great. I will definitely see you guys at Gen Con 50.
Yes.
If not before.
There you go. This Did You Ever Notice is brought to you by all of our friends at Patreon. Those are the listeners who have gone above and beyond the call of duty or listenership, as the case may be, and gone over to patreon.com and checked out the D6 generation and probably even watched our pathetic little video, and then decided to help with the show by kicking in anything from 50 cents to the princely sum of $20 or more, for which we are truly, truly thankful. Today, I'd like to thank Bob King, Brendan Daly, Brendan Weir, Brennan Martin, and Brent Kreinop. So thanks to you guys, and thanks to everybody who goes the little extra and helps us out. Did you ever notice how far down the wrong path good intentions can get you? Of course you do. Of course you have. We all have. There's why it's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Today is not the most eloquent of days for me, but anyway, moving on. I'll fix that in post. So, it was occurring to me lately. Once again, every now and then I reflect on what's gone on with like this big, awesome gaming group that I'm a part of, and that really isn't that big anymore because everybody's going in different places and playing at different times and playing different games, and that's life. And as I've said before, there are no hard feelings. Everybody has every right to use what little leisure time we as adults have. And so no hard feelings whatsoever. I don't think there's any blame to go around. I'm just always very curious, like, how did we get to where we are at the moment? And a lot of that has to do with how many games there are. I mean, a long time ago, if you were talking mainstream wargaming, you had Warhammer 40,000, and that was pretty much it. As far as games that you could walk right into a store and buy stuff off the shelf. There were other, you had Micro Armor, but if you weren't going for historicals, more on that later, then it was really Games Workshop was the only game in town for the most part. And now, of course, look at what you've got. You've got Games Workshop stepping on its own foot decade after decade. You've had War Machine rising up to take their place. You had Spartan Games. You have Warlord. You've got, a million that I'm forgetting. And then you've got these little plucky guys that are rising up being awesome, like Guild Ball and Blood and Plunder and the latest coolness. And then, of course, you've got Kickstarter. So it's absolutely sensical that everybody would be wanting to play their game of the month or whatever was cool for them. But still, we held on even in the face of just ridiculously diverse gaming choices for a long time. And it's weird. Some of you may have remembered that I was complaining about my memory a few months ago, and I started taking vitamin D, I think. in like massive quantities that apparently I get rid of before my body can make any use of whatsoever, but it made me feel better. And since I've started that, I've had two very strange moments of epiphany. It's like a lightning from a clear blue sky. All of a sudden, something became clear to me. One was on the walk, on the hike up Mount Machu Picchu, which made sense to me that I would have a big epiphanal moment. I think I might have made that one up. In that sort of atmosphere and environment. The other one, very recently, was sitting in my car in a parking lot waiting for Russ to show up so that we could play Vikings on Board in a bar. And I was just thinking where everybody was and what everybody was doing and all kinds of different places. And it suddenly struck me that it's math, which is why it hadn't struck me sooner. And it's like this. You've got a big gaming group. And one smaller subset of that group, decides that they want to play a different game than everybody else. They don't want to break apart from the whole group, but every now and then they're going to want to do their own thing, which makes perfect sense and is completely valid. And so they go off-site, away from your whole group, for only 1 week a month, which is not that big a deal, and it makes perfect sense. And when it happened, it made perfect sense. And it made perfect sense to this day. The ramifications of that, however, don't really become obvious for a little while, I think, because then you've got other groups that go, well, they're doing it, and that is working great for them. So I think we want to do that. We want to do a little game, and we're going to take this weekend of the month, this Tuesday of the month, and we're going to do our own little thing. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Still, totally valid. No less valid than the first group. But then you have another group that does it, and then you have another group that does it. Right? And all of a sudden, all of your Tuesdays are bespoke by many of your members. Now, for the facility of my bad math, let's say that the average lifespan of a game in your group is 4 weeks. And what usually happens is everybody plays the game for 4 weeks and then they move on. What happens if each of these little subgroups that's meeting once a month has that same math with it? And it doesn't, actually, for a variety of reasons that I've noticed. These little groups that go off and only do it once a month, actually elongates the lifespan of that game. But let's just stick with the math for now. So 4 weeks, but it's not 4 weeks anymore. It's 4 months, right? And so what you're looking at is, once everything starts to get established and this pattern is all set up, you're looking at 4 months where most of the gaming nights are now bespoke for most of the people. Now, not everybody is playing every one of the games. Some people aren't playing any of the games. But a large chunk of your cohesive gaming group is now bespoke for every Tuesday of the month, for 4 months stretched out. And what happens to the fabric of your group at that point is it starts to fray. Because now it's not like, oh, well, every Tuesday I go to the X place and all the people are there, and whether they're playing a game or not, that I want to play or not, that's where all my friends are, so I'm going to go there. We all have days when, even though it's game night and we get super excited, maybe there's something else that we want to do, or maybe we're not really super jazzed about it for whatever reason, had a rough day at work, whatnot. Usually what will draw us out on a night like that is the fact that that's where all of our friends are. We know where all our friends are going to be. But once that the fraying fabric of the group starts to get hold and starts to get into your mind, and you realize, wow, you know what? When I go there, not everybody's going to be there. They're not all going to be playing games. Well, the draw to bring me out of my shell, so to speak, is not there. It's not as strong. And over time, it weakens even more until eventually you're going to see Star Trek for the third time instead of going out, gaming. Because dependent upon the Tuesday or the game night, there may not be any games going on. And so if you then extrapolate this, so let's say we've gone out 4 months, and let's say the cycle continues for 2 or even 3 times, where with new games getting slotted into that, you've now got 8 months to a year where your group has no cohesion. And then that's when things suddenly, the pull is not there anymore, the magnetism is not there anymore, the identity isn't really there anymore. And it all can be traced back to this very logical, very sensible answer to this problem of I would like to play my game off on one side. And again, totally a valid option. And this did not happen in our group. Our group, a little bit of this happened in our group, but I'm just in an overall, I'm sort of extracting from this sort of like a worst case scenario. And so, like we didn't have like 4 months and 4 different groups and they were all playing different games. That's not what really happened. But it made sense to me that wow, like that could help a situation where you go from a very coherent, cohesive gaming group to a much more fractured, well, the space doesn't really matter much anymore, or maybe these people are going to this place where its lighting's not good, or they're going to that place that's not as clean as the other store, or they're going to this other place where they're not comfortable. And so your cohesion kind of falls apart. And it all kind of works together. But it just sort of struck me. Like I said, I was sweating because I don't know, I'd turned my car off for some reason and I didn't have the air conditioner on. But literally, Russ walked up to my car to tell me that he had arrived, and I had a tax document actually, and I was writing notes for this little epiphany on the back of the tax document, which at the top said "left blank on purpose," I think, which was weird. Anyway, so that was my thought. So you might want to keep an eye out for that. And I don't know, do you see this happen? Have you seen this happen? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And keep in mind, don't read too much into my using the first person throughout this, because most of this did not happen with our group. So I'm not pulling back the curtain and revealing to you this grand thing, because it really didn't. We're humans, so we're very complex. And that means that everything we touch becomes very, very complex. It can't be rendered down like that. But I think this helped or hurt. And again, everybody who did anything along that line, totally valid. Because this is our leisure time. You need to do what you want to do for your leisure time. And I got to get going because I'm going to paint up some Conflict 47 models and play Russ later on tonight. So that's all I've got to say about that. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Curt, please give me a few comments about levels and things.
Oh, levels are amazing. What I really like about levels is they progress, usually in an exponential or logarithmic scale. Very interesting of study and indicative of the grind. If you really want to get into my PhD is actually on the grind.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's very good.
That's a lie.
Your levels are quite good. Craig, how are your levels, sir?
My levels, I don't know. I probably could use a donut, to be honest.
Sadly, it's not a lost chapter. We're not in Dunkin' Donuts right now.
Well, that's not going to stop me from going and stealing my son's donut that he left in the fridge.
Fair enough. Hey, if you go to bed, you lose all donut claim
That's right.
rights.
That's right.
I think that's fair.